Mendon. I wish we were there in person and having a nice meal together. We'll wait a couple minutes for folks who are coming in.
Still people coming in the waiting room. Hi, everyone. As you're coming in, just to minimize kind of background noise, if you could hit the mute button for now until we're having more facilitated conversations later on. And you'll find, if you're on a computer, you'll find the mute button down at the bottom of your screen on the far left. And if you're on a device, you can kind of tap your screen and then you'll have that option to hit mute. If you're calling in on the phone, *6 is the way that you would mute.
We'll wait one more minute. Well, I'm going to start. I'm Paul Costello. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Council on Rural Development, and welcome to the Mendon community visit process. Normally we'd be there in person. We'd have a great meal together. We'd have time to bump elbows and chat and so forth. And those days will come back. This is about the 80th community visit process we've done in the state of Vermont in towns as large as Bennington and Rutland and as small as Craftsbury and Island Pond. And we come into this process, we're charged by the federal farm bill to help small communities and serve as a neutral facilitator of public process everywhere from private retreats with the governor to building policy councils to advance rural initiative. We don't know what's good for Mendon. We've been engaged with Mendon for a long time in conversation now. We started thinking with Mendon almost 2 years ago about this process. We scheduled into last year. Last year got knocked out of the water and everything felt like dominoes for us. We have learned how to use the digital tools by working and helping to lead the governor's recovery task force and doing sessions like this all over the state. But this will be the second online process that we've done. We're just completing it with Londonderry. We went in with a lot of trepidation. You know, can we pull together? Will people engage? Will we have strong positive outcomes and a sense of great momentum in the community? And the good news is it was a home run. People are lined up really effectively in Londonderry around 3 core priorities, and they're driving work forward for the good of their community. And they've also connected to a really great action team. So I want to introduce tonight the people who are on the VCRD team who are participating in the process with us. We've brought with us tonight, and I'll just ask you to wave your hand at the screen if you would. Ed Bove, the Executive Director of the Rutland Regional Planning Commission. Brockton Corbett, who's the David Rahr Community Philanthropy Fellow at the Vermont Community Foundation. Ben Doyle, Executive Director of Preservation Trust of Vermont. Lyle Jepson, the Executive Director for the Chamber and the Economic Development of the Rutland Region Office. Trey Martin, Chief Strategic Officer and General Counsel for Let's Grow Kids. John Michael Muse, the Vermont Area Director for USDA Rural Development. John Sinclair, the Forest Supervisor for Green Mountain and Finger Lakes National Forest. Tyler Richardson, Operations Director, the Chamber and Economic Development in the Rutland region. And Kevin Weiberg, Philanthropic Advisor for Community Engagement at the Vermont Community Foundation. Our team is myself, Margaret Gibson McCoy is on the phone, on the call, the Operations Communications Director. Alyssa Johnson, who provides follow-up for project development with communities. Jenna Koloski, the Community and Policy Manager who leads the development of these processes, and Nick Kramer, our Community and Policy Associate. Community visits are really designed to help people go from one of the most fundamental challenges of rural communities, which is there's a lot of ideas that hit the table. There's lots of challenges. A lot of those challenges that get brought to the select board, and the select board may have a list of 20 or 40 things that they're working on, and it's overwhelming. Or people may have a lot of ideas for potential action in the community, but they don't know where to start, and the whole community is not engaged. So the community visit process is one that invites a community to come together to evaluate the different ways that it could move forward and the things that could be done to drive community and economic development to make it the best possible town for the future, the best place to attract young people, the best place for the highest quality of life, and all the other goals that come from the community. We don't bring goals to the communities. We don't think we know what's good for communities. Instead, we engage in a process that allows people put their ideas on the table and then choose from those ideas the ones they want to act on, connect to resources, look to build ties to become a squeaky wheel that gets the grease from state, federal, nonprofit partners. But it's all about local leadership. Resources follow those who set direction, and momentum comes from those who set direction. So the process is really built around local leadership. In Mendon, this is a two-part process, and tonight we've got a full agenda where we're going to take some time to brainstorm some ideas towards a vision for the future of Mendon. And Jenna's going to lead us in that process, which will be a fairly staccato listing this week of ideas towards action. We'll also evaluate 4 areas that were identified by a steering committee that met in advance of this to consider the ways this kind of a process could fit with Mendon and Mendon's challenges and opportunities. So we'll have sessions from 6:30 on to 7:40 or so on the future of recreation in Mendon. You obviously have some wonderful outdoor recreation assets. Another discussion on community connection, identity, and sense of place. And then we'll take a break. And at 7:45, we'll come back to talk about the vitality of the Mendon economy and what could be done to advance it. And another on quality of life and supporting families in Mendon. We'll be taking dense notes. In each session, we'll be discussing assets, challenges and opportunities, and ideas towards action. And really the big product of the night is to gather as many of your ideas towards action as possible. At the end of each session, we'll have only about 10 minutes for people who are on the visiting team, the outside team, to share their reflections based on their knowledge of other towns having done this work, potential grant sources or technical assistance that could be brought to bear, what they heard as a key theme that may be a real momentum builder for the community. And so they'll each have an opportunity to reflect at the end, but we'll be following a timeline from Jenna to go step by step through the process this evening. Next month, we'll come back on April 21st at 6:30. And on the 21st, we'll put all the ideas up on the virtual wall here electronically. And we'll be able to walk through all the key ideas that came out of this process so far in terms of the community's thinking about the best opportunities for action. We'll have time to choose among those which are the most important. We'll have time to champion among those big ideas, which ones will have the most power, are most doable, are going to be most unifying and energizing for the community, and ultimately which ones people want to line up around for action. And we'll build towards that list. We'll be bringing a team back with us next month, and that team will help you think about what are some of the action steps to move forward to drive that idea forward. What are some of the potential state, federal, nonprofit, or private sector resources that could help drive that work forward? So we're really excited about being here with Mendon, and we've got a full agenda tonight. It's going to be a serious work session. We will hear from you in a little bit, but we wanted to take some time up front to frame the structure of the process. One more thing I'd say before I turn it over to Jenna is that people come into these processes thinking that that it's really difficult to get big things done. One of the things that we see towns do in these processes is identify things like transforming a downtown streetscape, identifying derelict buildings that need to be redeveloped, the idea of building a community center or a public daycare center for the community, the idea of building outdoor recreation trails and unifying a big prospect of outdoor recreation work. The idea of developing an economic development task force or an agricultural network for the community. And we don't come in proposing based on what we think about the community, but we see this collective wisdom of the community coming together and identifying really big ideas. And we've been doing this a long time, and we've seen tremendous stuff happen. We see towns build significant momentum as communities. We see them build a deeper sense of place, a deeper sense of connectivity. We see new volunteerism, young volunteerism, it getting outside of the central circle of people who are leading so much. We see it draw in additional resources in terms of local leadership and new leadership. But we also see that towns that line up this way are the towns that are successful in getting state and federal resources. A couple years ago, the Northern Borders region grant process up in the kingdom, half the grants went to communities that have just been through a process like this because they were teed up, the communities were unified, they had a sense of direction, they had people working together, they were connected to the regional development, regional planning commissions, and those are the people who are ready to receive investment and drive forward. So it's an honor to be part of this process. For us, we're very old fashioned. To us, this is all about democracy. It's about putting yourself on the line for what you believe, putting yourself on the line for your community, and engaging others in the communities to build momentum and lift the community up for the next generation. So it's an honor to be part of the conversation with you all. I'll turn it over to Jenna to make sure if I've missed some things, and she'll also talk a little bit about our technology and how we shift point to point in this meeting. But she's also going to run us through a vision exercise that the steering committee wanted us to go through tonight. Jenna.
Thanks, Paul. And hi, everyone. I just want to say thank you all so much for taking the time this evening to come out and think about the future of your community. I'm eager to hear your ideas. In a moment, we are going to break out into those two different task force areas that Paul described. Being in a virtual format, we all need to work together to make sure that we can do that smoothly. And so I'm going to describe really quickly for you how we're going to go about breaking into these breakout rooms. And it's a task we all need to do together. I wonder, Margaret, could you pull up that sheet?
Yep, sure.
So we're just going to give some instructions here, and then we'll get into that visioning conversation. So in just a moment here, we're going to break out into these two different rooms. So you're going to have a choice between joining a forum on the future of recreation in Mendon or a forum on community connection, identity, and sense of place. And so we've found that Zoom doesn't make it super easy to we wish that we were like in a room where you could just walk into the room of the topic that you wanted to discuss. But Zoom doesn't make it that easy. And so it's helpful to us to know which forum you want to attend so that Nick here in the background can be assigning us to the breakout session. So if you do us a huge favor and add a number to your name that tells us which room you want to go to. So you see the example here of my name. There's a couple different ways you can rename yourself. If you know how to do it, go ahead and do it now and just put a 1 in front of your name if you want to talk about recreation, and a 2 in front of your name if you want to talk about community connection, identity, and sense of place. For those of you that are new to Zoom, there's a couple different ways you can rename yourself. The one that we have laid out here is if you click on participants at the bottom of your Zoom screen, then you can find your own name and hover over it, and then rename will pop up and you can click that and then add the number to your name. Another way to do it is actually find your picture or your name on the screen and right click. And you can also choose to rename yourself. So again, a 1 for the future of recreation in Mendon, and a 2 for community connection, identity, and sense of place. And let me just say, if none of that made sense to you and you don't know where to go, it's okay. Alyssa on our team, or no, Margaret on our team is going to be hanging back in the main room. And you can just stay where you are. And then she can help assign you to where you want to go. So there's different ways to join. We're going to have this visioning conversation, and then when it's time to do the breakout, I'll let you all know, and you're going to see a window pop up on your screen that asks you if you want to join the room, and you just tell it, yes, I do, and you'll get sent to the right place. So thank you for bearing with us on this technological strategy. So Margaret, if you want to pull that down.
Okay, you don't need the agenda.
No, that's okay.
Aoloski.
All right. So so we're going to take a step back a second. So this is where we're going to turn to all of you, and we want to hear from you about Mendon. Before we break out into these kind of action-oriented conversations. So in a moment, we're going to talk about recreation. We're going to talk about community connection. We're going to be asking you, what are your ideas for action? What are the things that Mendon should do in the future to achieve the things that you want to achieve? But before we get into that, I actually want to just take a step back and ask, what are we working towards? What's the vision that we see for the future of the community? We asked the steering committee, do you think it would be valuable to have a conversation on vision before we get into the kind of prioritization of action? And the steering committee said, yeah, we haven't really had that conversation in Mendon. What's our vision for the future? What are the things that we would like to see? If we work on and accomplish all of these things that we decide on, what does that look like in Mendon? So I'm looking for 1-sentence statements that say, I see a future of Mendon where, you know, where our kids want to stay or move back to in the future, whatever that might be for you. I'd love to hear that. And Margaret's going to capture some notes. And then next month, when we come back together on April 21st, we'll review those ideas together and make some decisions on what should be included. So right now, all ideas are welcome on the table. And to contribute your idea, you can either like kind of wave a hand at me if you're on camera, or you can use the Zoom raise hand function. If you do click on participants, again, there's a place to raise your hand, or reactions in that window. There's also a place to raise a hand. Does anyone want to kick us off by sharing a vision point for the future of Mendon? What would you like to see in your community in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now?
I'll start.
Great. Who's that? Marianne, go ahead.
Hi. What I see, sorry, my dog's barking.
That's okay.
What I see for Mendon is a central location where we can meet. That's what I foresee.
Mendon has a central location where the community can come together.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Marianne.
Okay.
Other ideas? Raise a hand or feel free to unmute and jump in and share your thought. Fred, go ahead.
I want to see Mendon rebuild its historic downtown on Route 4.
Great, thank you, Fred. Other vision points. You can think of them as kind of outcomes. If we do this work, what does that look like? What does that mean for the community in the future?
This is Nicole Kesselring. I'd like to see the Route 4 corridor become more economically sound, contributing to the economy of Mendon, turn all the defunct hotels around and put them to productive use.
All right, thanks, Nicole. And we'll have an opportunity soon to get into all the details of what that might look like, the action of what that would look like, but certainly have that captured as a vision as well.
This is Carolyn McBain. I ditto what Nicole just said. And
Great.
also Fred, I would love to talk more about what that will look like.
Yeah, and so in each of these forums, we can get a little bit more into kind of what that would look like and what actions we need to take place to get there. But for now, kind of what's the end goal?
And again, I would love to see sort of the blight of the corridor, the Route 4 corridor, like go away. You know, have our beautiful, you know, drive through our town look much more pleasing, to cause people to want to stop and be part of the community. And also I want to talk about the addition of the new National Forest headquarters coming
Great.
to this area and what that will hopefully bring to us.
Great, thank you.
My name's Megan Smith. I would love to have a plan together before the forestry building opens to really hit the ground running when it arrives and have a real plan within the community of how we're going to do that.
So those are the kinds of things that we're really going to dig into in these forums once we break out, to kind of think about those action steps to get there. And
Okay.
I can tell, I already can sense a few things that people are eager to dive into. And I'm glad, but right now I want to keep it to that next level of vision points. Fred, you have another one to share? And then Jeff.
This is Jennifer speaking.
Oh, hey, Jennifer.
We're gonna have a 10th anniversary of Irene, some kind of celebration coming up in August. And I wish there was a way we could recreate what happened to our town 10 years ago when we all got together and worked really hard and helped each other and felt a real sense of community as we were struggling with the challenges of Irene. And I have no idea how to do that, but we all remember it well. It sounds weird. We remember a difficult time fondly because we worked so well together, everybody in the town. And I wish we could get back to that somehow. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. The nice thing about vision is we don't have to answer how just yet. We can just add it to the list. Jeff, and then Rich, and then Roy. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hi, my name's Jeff Barron. I just wanted to say that I'd like to see Mendon as less of a pass-through town going up to the trails in Killington. That's about it.
Yeah, a place where people are going to rather than going through, maybe. Rich, go ahead.
Actually, there are a lot of common themes, and I agree with Jeff and everybody else. So there's not much else I can add, but I don't want to see us continue as a pass-through from Rutland to Killington and clean up the blight. And I think beautification, recreation, and other things will contribute to it. It will come to fruition with a strong local economy. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Roy.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Roy Copans, and I've got twin boys who are 7 years old, and I'd love for them to have a real sense of community in Mendon. They grew up in Philadelphia and right downtown, and there was a real sense of place where Mendon is sort of spread out and all over the place, and something that would lead them to have a sense of community, and then, as you suggested, someplace they might return to raise their kids.
Great, thank you, Roy. So we've got just a few minutes left. Any other vision points to share? Mary Ruth, are you raising a hand?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'd like to, reiterate what the rest have said. The part about turning around the vacant motels. There's enough area there, enough footprint that there could be a small, maybe small manufacturing, some technical something or other that could go in there. Small business, but something that could use that area. There'd be plenty of parking places. But I'd sort of like to join that group that would like to do that. Also, we do have a nice rec area on the South Mendon Road where ball games are held and that kind of thing. So that could probably be beefed up a little bit.
Yeah, and Mary, again, we'll get into some of those details, but I think we'll
definitely.
capture that vision. And I'm
Okay.
being told by my team here that I'm missing some hands up. So I think I've missed James Elvin.
Yeah, Al Wakefield.
Oh, hi, Al.
Hey there, Jen. As somebody who has traveled a lot and worked out of Mendon through even video conferencing going back 25 years ago, so I'd like to see, and I'm not sure how it's done because nobody wants big towers sitting in the middle of town, but the ability to be able to communicate to the rest of the country and worldwide as we work more out of our homes and our small offices along Route 4 or off Route 4, but the ability to work reliably and to be able to communicate with the rest of the world without fear of dropping out.
Great. Thank you, Al. Any other, Terry?
Hi, Terry Corsones. Following up on the Route 4 vision, I would love to see businesses geared to supporting people taking advantage of the recreational opportunities that are not just in Mendon, but in the surrounding vicinities as well. I think there'd be a huge market for that, and how to tie that in with the other aspects of the vision that have been described so nicely for Mendon.
Great. Thank you, Terry.
Yeah.
Maybe time for one more, if anyone has anything, any last.
Sure, I'd like to jump in.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, this is Vinod Jagaru. I first should add that I'm Boston based, but I do have a second multi-unit home in Mendon, and I've been in some way or the other associated with the town for about 31 years. I've had the house now for about 12 years, so I spend a good chunk of the year in Mendon, certainly much of the summer, and I'm up there almost every 4 weeks or so. What I have to, I certainly echo everything I've heard so far. And as like many of you, I'm sure many of you have been in Mendon much longer than I have, but I certainly have been a long observer of the town. And as I've said, a part-time resident of the town. So I would echo much of what I heard regarding the development of Route 4. And the difficulty I have, which I'm sure we're going to be exploring here, is where's the balance between businesses that add up to economic, development and stimulation of the economy versus keeping some of the character, which I'm sure is the difficult thing we're all going to grapple with. Regarding businesses, this may be a bit too specific for this part of the discussion. I just wonder whether further stimulation of the existing type of businesses, the hotels and the restaurants, how much of that is really going to serve Mendon in the long term? It's considering that so many of them have died out, especially when one compares the current state to, looking back to the late 80s when winters used to be very vibrant with Cotina Inn alive and well. I worked there as a student on an exchange program many years ago. It was a very, very different environment. So I'm wondering about businesses that could be, that on the one hand could keep the character of the place, but be innovative on the other. So I do support the idea of small industries that won't serve to tear up the natural surrounds, if you will.
Yeah.
That's one point.
Well, I think that we're going to dig into all of that in these breakout sessions and need to move on to that. But what I'm hearing in that is a vision of fostering creative and innovative businesses while also maintaining the rural character of the community. So doing that kind of growth in line with the character and feel of the community today. Does that make sense as the point? And then we'll dig into those details in the breakout session.
Sure. Then I'll just be very quick, and I have 3 other points to make. One is someone mentioned the possibility of I think if I heard correctly, hiking trails. There's a big aging population in Vermont. I think there's opportunity to design some kind of trail that does cater to people with limited mobility or older people, and there are models for this around the world, and we can go into that. And I actually observed this in the country, and that's what made me mention it.
Yeah,
So
these points are exactly what we want to be hearing in the breakout forum. So let's wrap up the vision session, and then I hope that you'll join the economy and the recreation sessions to share those other points, because that's exactly what we want to get in the notes for action.
No
problem. So let's wrap with the vision session. Thank you for sharing your vision points. So what we're going to do, Margaret captured all of those. We're going to be sharing those back next month on April 21st. You'll have a chance to kind of go through You may agree with all of those, you may agree with some of them, and you'll have a chance to let us know. So right now, we're going to go ahead and dive into those more detailed conversations around assets and challenges and ideas for action. For those of you that have joined in after my renaming instructions, you might notice there's numbers in front of everyone's names. If you have a moment and are able to, you can use the renaming function within Zoom to let us know which breakout forum you would like to attend. So if you have number 1 in front of your name, we'll send you to the Future of Recreation forum. If you have a number 2 in front of or next to your name, we'll send you to the Community Connection and Quality of Life forum. So those are the 2 choices for this first one. If you don't know how to do the renaming function, feel free to stick here in the main room, and Margaret will assign you to where you want to go, and that's fine as well. So I think we're ready. Nick, are you ready to send us on our way?
I am, yeah. I'm just keeping my eyes peeled for any last minute sorting, but I think, Margaret, you may just have to do a little shepherding. So the way this should work, everyone, I'm going to hit this button. You should all see a little banner come up across the bottom of your screen inviting you to join the breakout room, and we'll see you there.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I know Paul Costello should be joining us shortly to help facilitate. Oh,
I'm here.
Okay, sorry.
Hey there, everyone. Sorry, it's always a little bit of a struggle with these, the learning curve and the virtual space. It's a miracle always when we all make it in one piece. But so I'm gonna just maybe wait a second. I think it's gonna take a while. We've got a number of people still in the main room. I think Margaret is trying to sort through. So be not alarmed if there are folks trickling in, but we've got a lot of ground to cover. So I think I might as well go ahead and get started. My name, as Paul said earlier, is Nick Kramer. I'm staff at VCRD. I'll be the one facilitating this session. This is the Community Connection, Identity, and Sense of Place breakout. Really excited to be here and be part of this conversation. Jenna and I had the great fun of driving down to Mendon for some of the preliminary outreach for this this forum, and really had a great day down there. So excited to hear from all of you. I think we can kind of blast through housekeeping, general Zoom things, since we are sort of a sizable group. I hope everyone can stay muted primarily, and unless you're speaking, just helps to eliminate the background noise and barking dogs and crying babies, etc. And then in terms of when you would like to speak, we've had a little practice, but hello there.
Hello? Oh, how did I unmute? Am I muted?
I've just muted you, Lynn. Yep, and now you're unmuted. So that was a perfect example of muting and unmuting. I'm muting you, and then if you need to unmute, that button for everybody is in the bottom left corner of your screen. So, all right, and I think that's it. And then for raising hands, you feel free to raise your flesh and blood hand, or if you go to, there's a little button that says reactions at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you click that, there should be an option that says raise hand. And that's helpful as we go through the conversation, because I can just see sort of who's queued up. So I'm going to do something here. I'm going to post quickly our agenda into the chat so that folks get a sense of sort of what we're going to do here for the next hour and 10 minutes. We're going to try to stick closely to this structure that we find it really helps to kind of progress in a linear way. There's obviously a lot to talk about in this area of community connection and sense of place. But sometimes progressing kind of from assets to challenges, then to ideas for action can help us not get bogged down in any one particular conversation, and sort of drive forward for a sense of ultimately, like Paul said, what we're hoping for is to really gather all of your ideas for what we can do in this area. So I'm going to soon stop talking. At the very end, we'll have an opportunity to hear from our visiting team. We're lucky to have Ed, Trey, Tyler, and Kevin on with us in this session. I'll let them introduce themselves more kind of at the end. But I think that's it. And so what we should get right down to it. I'll look to anybody who wants to kick off the conversation, thinking about what are the biggest assets that currently exist in Mendon in this arena. So when you think of community connection, identity, and sense of place, what's going on currently that's really positive? What exists that could be leveraged? Sort of, let's start there. And then, like I said, we'll work through challenges and then action steps after that. So anybody, any brave souls want to get us started? Yeah, Rich.
We have in our town, US Route 4, a gateway to New Hampshire, Massachusetts. On the west side, it'd be New York, New Jersey. So that's an asset.
Absolutely.
US Route 4. Very basic.
No, it's good place to start. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Other thoughts? Other folks? Yeah, Kevin, or maybe Kevin's partner?
We're Kevin and Joanna Hagan, we're on here together. I think that the new National Forest headquarters is an asset that's about to happen, and finding a way to leverage that, maybe even by looking at the vacant motel right next door. Is there some way to leverage that and use it for the community, or to use it as an economic base?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something we've heard a bit about. Great. Thank you, Joanna.
Could I express a concern? Am I being heard?
Yes, Lynn. At least I'm hearing you well.
Yeah. My biggest concern, frankly, is what's going on with nature here, because we've been in this house for about 20 years and we're up on the Blue Ridge Mountain. And there's been a huge change in the nature just in those 20 years. So when we moved here, there were lots of bats and lots of other critters that are almost not existent anymore. And I'm very concerned. I don't know why that is. And I wonder if anybody else has noticed that there seems to be a real problem with the nature. And I know last summer, my garden was weird, and I've heard other people say the same thing. So for example, I go to a senior exercise class over in Chittenden where the whole row of bushes that were not young, they'd been there some time, they all turned, into being dead in the same year. And I've heard other people say the same thing just in my senior exercise class. And I wonder if anybody else is concerned about that.
So Lynn, if I can take a little bit of creative license here, and really hearing you loud and clear, trying to think ahead, those seem to me like really important points that may fit into this next challenges section that we're talking about. So if I'm not going too far out on a limb here to try to extract a couple assets maybe from there, am I hearing you right that in Mendon, in general, just the natural beauty, the natural ecosystem, sort of the historic natural landscape, is that one asset that you'd like to see sort of protected as moving forward?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's absolutely essential.
Okay.
If we lose that, then, I mean, what are we and who are we?
I hear you. Yeah, and I definitely want to come back to that theme as we kind of work through challenges and eventually get to ideas. So really thank you for bringing that up. Al, did I see you with a hand up? And then we'll go back to Rich.
Yeah, you did. I'm not sure this is an asset. In fact, I'm not sure how to put this. It's obviously a plus that allows the fish and wildlife people to move a fairly large facility with 50 or 60 people there, because that's going to bring tremendous economic benefit to this community. On the other hand, I look at that little house that's sitting right there, and the properties around it, and I wonder how you could do that without the people who are situated right next door being grossly affected, their property values going. So there's an asset there, but there's also a liability there. That makes sense?
Absolutely. I mean, if I'm hearing you right out, part of it is there's multiple assets. There's the potential asset of a incoming economic engine, but there's also this really valuable sort of built existing traditional infrastructure, right? And so maybe that's a piece to pull out of that there's sort of those two not competing, but two existing sets of assets.
I mean, do you want to say something?
Yeah. How do you allow, how do you provide for economic growth through, whether it's building a building or a business that is a service, that's allowed to thrive, and at the same time allow people to coexist in their house comfortably, and not reduce the value of their probably the biggest asset they have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing that up. Got about 3 more minutes in this section. So I saw Rich, and then I see Hannah's got a hand up, and then after that, I'll come back to you, Jennifer.
We have a new, vibrant, centrally located town hall asset. We also have a pretty good housing stock in town of Mendon. We're referred to as a bedroom community. Our real estate prices are holding their own and increasing. And one of the major attractions for young families is the quality of the elementary school at Barstow in Chittenden. So those are a few assets that I think come along with living in Mendon. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a substantive list. Thanks, Rich. Hannah Abrams, do you have a thought?
Yes, I'm here. Still figuring out my video. Anyway, I think that one of our assets is sort of what Rich just said, bedroom community. I mean, one of the things that really drew me to Mendon is it's sort of a, in my opinion, sweet, quiet, non-controversial town that just kind of exists and has wonderful diversity of, or fairly diverse, it depends how we're using the term, diversity of people. And its proximity to Killington is great. Its proximity to Rutland is great. It's just highly desirable in my opinion. So there are certain things that I don't feel like we need to see this. Anyway, that's an asset. I'll just stick with that. Those are the assets. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. I saw Jennifer had her hand up, and then Ann, I'll come back to you.
Yes, thank you. Another asset that I have to brag a little bit about the Mendon Historical Society is that there's a kiosk next to our town hall that does a great job of talking about the history of Mendon, the geology of Mendon, and the fact that we are the gateway to all the hiking trails. And so we're very excited about the Green Mountain headquarters. One little side concern about that is that we live up by the Red Clover Inn. We come out of Woodward Road, and we're completely right across from where the new center is going to be. And I think we in the town of Mendon might want to make sure that there's at least a flashing light, because there'll be cars turning into the Green Mountain Center as there are cars turning into our road. And that might be a potential traffic congestion area that needs to be done. But more importantly, the fact that that is a resource that we can emphasize for all of us, that the hiking trails around here are just outstanding. And so we're really looking forward to working with the Green Mountain folks to make sure that works to everyone's advantage. And hiking trail that my husband wrote for all the trails, we are in the process of making more of them, and we will be offering them to that center for when they come in. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. I see Ann, Roy, and then I think we'll have to transit. I'll give Roy the last word on assets. So go ahead, Ann.
Ann?
Yep. Yeah. Ann,
All right. Following up on education, it's very good to note that
school choice at the high school level is a real asset in this town. And I think that attracts a lot of people to move here. The second thing is that it's a declining asset, that we do have a historic center, which really needs a lot of work, a lot of restoration. We need a state village designation, but that's a challenge and an asset at the same time. It needs a lot of work, but it could be in a declining, I think, a rising asset.
Thanks, Ann. And Roy.
Just want to reiterate, someone mentioned it, the rec center at South Mendon Road. We live right down the road, and it's someplace that kids love, and see that as an asset that could be added to in some way, from the kids' point of view, perhaps. So
Great. Thanks, Roy. And I see it in the chat. I want to make sure it's not lost. I'm sure I should have said at the outset, I think Alyssa is diligently capturing all of these notes. So we're recording everything. And Rich brings up good fire and police protection. Definitely an asset. So it's always great when we get steamrolling and have to cut short the positives question, but I'm sure there's also lots of challenges to get into and discuss, some of which already sort of reared their heads. So without further ado, let's switch to that. What are some of the biggest challenges Mendon's facing right now in this area? It's Roy first, and then we'll go to Al.
sorry, I just spoke, but I think this is apropos to all of this. When I say, where am I from? I say Rutland. Just end it with that.
Fair enough. So sort of lack of a sense of place. Is that fair to say, Roy?
Exactly.
Fair paraphrase.
And that's the point of this whole thing. So yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, Al, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to violate your rule here because I didn't get it. My violation is that I think Mendon, and maybe it's been said already, is ideally placed between, it's not Killington and it's not Rutland, and it's just a wonderful place to go for either direction as such. The liability part, which is what you asked, is that, yeah, you can go rip roaring through here, and that may not be the most wonderful, quiet place. Sorry.
Yes. No, totally fair. I don't have the power to eject anyone, so you're safe for now, Al. Appreciate it. Other challenges folks are thinking of?
Well, I'll get back to what I said before, which
Sure,
is that
yeah,
I'm really quite concerned about the very profound changes in the nature itself. And I was wondering if other people have noticed that. I mean, we used to have to close our screen door in the summer. We don't have to close our screen door anymore because there are no insects, none. And the woodpeckers aren't very happy about that.
I bet. Yeah, that sounds pretty dramatic. Are there other folks that have experience that, does that resonate? Other thoughts on sort of the ecological challenge?
It's Marianne.
Yep.
I've actually noticed a different change with the animals, the forest animals. I live on the side of Blue Ridge Mountain, and I'm seeing a lot more of them in my yard. You know, it's nothing for me to see a bobcat sitting in the front yard, which it's a little unusual. And we have a lot of bear and deer and moose. And it seems like they're not staying into the woods as much as they used to. So that's what I've noticed.
Maybe when all of your wildlife went to Mary Ann's house. In all seriousness though, I wonder, does anybody have thoughts on sort of other observations on this one? If changes in wildlife or ecology? Yeah, Joanne?
Yeah, this is only our 4th summer here in this house, but we've been in Vermont much longer. And I agree that we saw more wildlife last year, but I think that might have been driven by the drought. I mean, the drought had definitely an impact on plants, on ponds and things like that fairly severely last year. And I think it drove animals to look more broadly for food and things.
Yeah, our pond was drawn down at least 3 feet.
Yeah.
When is the last time you saw a bluebird or one of those goldfinches, just to give you an example? I haven't seen those birds. They used to be quite common around here.
See Rich with a hand up?
Yeah, sure. Lynn, to your point, I've actually have a couple bluebird families checking out the potential residences in my backyard. I've taken down my bird feeders because the bear are out and they think it's a feeding station. I have a bobcat, Marianne. Deer trim my shrubs without any expense to me. But my gardens are always, pretty vibrant and, that kind of thing. So I don't see Lynn's issue here in Eastridge Acres. Thank you.
So, I don't want to prematurely end this conversation. It sounds like there's a lot of kind of a diversity of experience with regards to this question. Lynn, I'm hearing pretty loud and clear that that it's an issue and on folks' radar, and maybe there's no clear consensus about patterns. But I do want to make sure sort of we're in a compact time frame that we give some time to other challenges. Sarah, yeah, did you have a kind of last thought or something else?
It's just a challenge, and it's going to stem off of Jennifer's comments earlier. Is after Tropical Storm Irene, we felt a great sense of place in Mendon, that we had over 250 volunteers from the area towns come and assist Mendon in its recovery, as well as our locals that helped neighbors that they normally would only wave to from their driveway or passing in a car. And to find a way to bring that sense of place back to Mendon, we know it's here. We just have to cultivate it in a way that it's here all the time and not just in emergencies. So.
Thanks, Sarah, for that. Yeah, Fred.
And one real quick liability is the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit through the middle of our town. For those of you who are old enough, there was a time 25, 30 years ago where it was 50, and it took literally an act of God to get it down to 45. But there should be a town-wide effort to try to get it down to 40. As you know, we had a death up on Route 4 not long ago. The circumstances still to be determined, but to be going 45 miles an hour through the middle of our town should definitely, that's considered a real detractor for businesses.
Thanks, Fred. Mary Ruth, did you?
Hi. I just want to talk to the those of us that are in the Historical Society. I don't want to overdo it, but we do have a lot of wonderful resources in our town. I was just hoping that Justin Lindholm was on here, but I know Ann Singheiser can speak to it. And of course, Fred and Jen, but we have so many historical spots in the area. We've taken hikes on that. So, I mean, maybe we could instigate that into some of our recreational, because we do have some wonderful resources. There's a lot of people on this screen that I've never met. I've probably waved to or whatever, but there's just so many resources here, and it's the people of Mendon. Just like to mention that.
Yeah, thanks, Mary Ruth. And I think you're edging into some ideas there, which I'm always happy to see. I bet that's going to be quite a good discussion. For now, we have about 5 more minutes in this section. Do folks have other thoughts on specific challenges with regards to community connection, identity, sense of place? We've heard a little bit about where I feel like we've heard a lot about community connection, sense of place, identity. Like, what does it mean to be, I don't know, is it a Mendonite? A Mendoner? What, Mendonite? Yeah, Leslie, I see a hand up.
Hi, everybody. I have to say, I'm speaking of the challenge here, and although I understand having Route 4 come right through Mendon is probably an economic and a business advantage, I've always felt that having a highway right through your town cuts at the center of what it could be. I've looked at other, I'm familiar with Manchester, and they have a very vibrant downtown for many aspects of the population. The younger kids can hang out and walk along the sidewalks downtown. They take off after school and they just walk around. There's retailers, but there's like the Spiral Cafe where they can just sit and have ginger ale or whatever and hang out. There's a Wi-Fi connection there. But I have always, I've raised 2 children here, and to go when they were younger, to just go somewhere else, you'd have to drive them a lot of the times, mostly because you're crossing over Route 4. So just, I want to add that to my challenge is Route 4 right through the town, and how to think of even seeing how the town doesn't have to deal with that. And I think that allows them to have more of
We're at least I'm losing you a little bit, Leslie. That sounds like there's maybe a mic jiggling.
I don't know if I will take it off.
But I think I got the gist of, and hopefully Alyssa did too, of sort of that duality of both the asset and the challenge of Route 4 and sort of a bifurcated, literally community with sort of a main thoroughfare. So yeah, thank you for that. Anne, I see your electronic hand up.
Yeah, something that was mentioned before, but I think definitely should be emphasized is the lack of a meeting area in our town. We struggle every year finding a place to have town meeting. We have to ask a motel, or used to with the Cortina used to be a good place. It's not available anymore. And the garage is a very nice place for garage, but not for a town meeting. And so a facility, we really need a facility.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Anne.
It was my idea. This is Mary Ann. And I agree. And I think that all these suggestions, all these ideas from people, they could all be solved by having, a central place in our community. You could, if there were hiking trails, you could have information about those there. You could have meetings, that kind of thing. I just think it would create the identity that we need. And that's, I don't know if we can do it, but I would like that.
Well, thanks, Marianne. That sounds like an idea. Definitely kind of a direction to go. And I think we're just about there. I think Joanne had a hand up.
I was going to, as a relative newbie, tell you what Mendon meant to us, why we're here. We saw Mendon as like sort of Vermont paradise. You were close enough to Rutland and to some degree of shopping. But when you're here, you would never know that any of that existed. And then in the other direction, you could go to Pico, or if you really needed to, you could go to Killington. And, it's like, what could be better than that? And so we found ourselves here, and we're thrilled, frankly. We started as part-time, and recently in the second half of last year became full-timers, and we're thrilled.
Well, thanks, Joanna. Yeah, it sounds like you should be on staff at the Mendon Board of Tourism there.
Also, there is a possibility that the Green Mountain Forest headquarters could be of some use to the town. For example, if they have a meeting space, and I have no idea whether that's something that's going to be available or not, but that certainly could be explored.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I mean, I think that's as good a segue as any. We've talked about assets, talked about challenges. Honestly, from my perspective, it almost seems like it's harder to get challenges out there. So many assets, so many good things going on. And now we have about half an hour, the biggest chunk of this breakout, to really get into some of these action ideas. How can we marry some of those challenges to assets in a meaningful way to drive forward the vision that we want in this arena? So I know folks have been sort of starting to popcorn some things off. I'd welcome the chance to revisit and maybe dive deeper into any of those ideas or new ones if folks have thoughts. Yeah, what should be done moving forward? What should we all line up behind?
Well, I'm wondering if it's possible to consider the idea of joining those two things together, of a community center with that forest center. For example, maybe rather than try to construct a whole new space, we could find out, explore anyway, the idea. I know in my particular case, I lived in France for 12 years, and every community had a cultural center, and that became the area where people could teach little classes or where concerts could take place, etc. And there is nothing like that here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I heard someone, and then I see Al with a hand up. Will go next. Yeah, person on the phone.
Yeah. Well, I don't live in Mendon. I've been through it by car very swiftly. I haven't explored it, but it's a kind of high up. So I think it would be a good place to have some place where you could have some bird watching at some spot. But the way I've connected with Mendon is through the Mendon Community Church. I'm going to their online services. And maybe that church could be an asset in some way to bring the community together for meetings or something. Maybe plays. There could be plays there, possibly. Okay. Or some kind of concerts, maybe. I don't know. I'm not, maybe I shouldn't be speaking because I'm not really an official member of the church, but I'm pretty interested in it. And I visited it once. It's a sweet little building. I think it's like Civil War time building. And it's got a nice environment to it. It's kind of on a little, propped up on a hill, and it's right there in Mendon.
Thank you. If you don't mind, can I give you a name, person on the phone?
Virginia Creighton.
Virginia. Okay, great. I'm just going to sort of rename you here. Yeah, thanks for that, Virginia. Somebody, Al, you had a hand up, and then we'll go back to Lynn.
Yeah, I think if we want economic development in this area, controlled economic development, rather than let businesses decide on their own who's going to come here, and maybe this comes out of this plan, why can't we take the lead and identify the kind of businesses that we want and figure out a way to offer some kind of incentives for those businesses to move here?
That's a great point. Thanks, Al. Fred? Or actually, yeah, well, let's go Fred, and then we'll go to Lynn.
I can't speak for John Sinclair and the Green Mountain National Forest, but the final drawings are going out to bid on their building pretty soon, so construction can start this spring. So I suspect it's well too late to incorporate any kind of community center in there because they have their own construction bidding process, which is happening right now. But they are intending to have a meeting room which can hold 70 or 80 people. So there is some prospect that the Mendon Town Annual Meeting can be held there. Whether it could be extended to be a true community center, frankly, seems a little remote. I think we'd have to look down to our recreation center on South Mendon Road, if there's going to be a facility like that.
Thanks, Fred. Lynn, yeah, I saw your.
Yeah, I didn't realize, of course, we pretty much keep to ourselves up here. I did not know that there was a community church in Mendon. I'd be very interested in knowing where that is.
I see Roy's hand up, but Virginia, maybe, do you want to quickly speak to that? Sounds like you've got some experience.
Yeah, I did visit it a couple of weeks ago, and I'm trying to remember. Let me see if I've got the address written down. If not, I can look for it and then signal to you that I found it. I think it's not right on 4, but it might be, and it's on kind of a little bit of a hill. It's a little small white building. It's very sweet. It's got like a little kitchen on the ground floor, and then the service areas on the main floor. And I think there's another floor. Yeah, I guess I'll look up the address for you and then get back to you. Is that okay?
Thank you so much. Since you're on the phone, you want to take my phone number in case you don't find it right away?
Yeah. And what's your name?
Yeah, I'm Lynn.
You're the nature lady.
Right.
Okay.
My name.
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
can you hear me?
quickly.
Can you hear me? Oh, I didn't know you could hear me. Okay, so the number is 770-1311.
770-1311. Okay.
You've got it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Nick, if I might just clarify, that church is right on Route 4 across from Sugar and Spice.
Great. Thank you, Sarah.
It's formerly Mendon Methodist Church. It's now Mendon Community Church.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize they'd changed names and so on. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Roy, I know you've been waiting with a hand up.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say 2 things. One,
just a hamburger is fine.
The comment about it being too late for that community center, I would want to not assume that, and why don't we ask that question? And that's probably something we can do as a group, I would guess, right? Or at least, yeah. And I really appreciate. I think that is that would be a key thing for me as a community center. But also in that same vein, that South Mendon Rec Center somehow maybe incorporate an indoor play space for the kids too. So maybe have a kids place for community, building on what's already there.
Great, thanks, Roy. Rich, I saw a hand up.
What if we, along the lines of the community center, look for housing stock, maybe along Route 4 that is vacant, then, we could perhaps get it donated or acquire it at a reasonable price. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Other ideas folks have? Got a lot in a couple different directions.
Al here. Hey, Sarah,
Yeah.
how much property does Mendon have right where the town office is?
Yeah, good question. Not much. Not much. We're taking up most of the real estate right there. But Mendon does have a vacant lot off of Stony Meadow Lane, right in the middle of Mendon. That would be on the flats, right across from the orchard. The second driveway of the orchard down by Orchard Drive across the street. A challenge at the rec center would be it's in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And we don't have a lot of land at that, that location. But we do have a little chunk of land off of Route 4, which would be more in the center of town. And then in the past, the town has looked at different facilities when we were trying to relocate the town office prior to building, about possibly moving into some of the existing buildings. So that's always a possibility. And, the sense of place, Mendon used to have a Grange Hall 30 years ago. We had access to a Grange Hall. That is no longer, that's now a residential house. But that was the last time that we had a meeting facility or a group. Parking was horrible there. But yeah, there's all kinds of ideas of where you might be able to put a community center.
Thanks, Tara. Other thoughts, ideas?
Mary
Jo-
Ann again. I'm sorry.
Let's go Joanne, then Mary Ann.
Okay.
We drive, along Route 4 quite frequently, and I always look at that motel. It's going to be right next to the abandoned motel. Is there a way to leverage that? I don't know if that building is just only condemnable or if it is possible. It's got parking, it's big but not too big. Maybe that's something that could be used for the community in some fashion.
It's a good thought. Thanks,
Joanne, is that the former Econo Lodge building? Because we have.
I don't know what it is.
The white one?
It's on the same side of the street as the Green Mountain National Forest property, not too far further west. Laughingly, I have said, should that be turned into like a hostel type hotel that campers could, hikers could use rather than having it sit, somewhat empty and deserted. I don't know, it just seems like that's something that we have places that are sort of eyesores. Would be nice to find a way to leverage them somehow. And following up on what Al said, doing it, not just letting it happen, but trying to direct it and kind of pull it so that it works to our benefit.
Thanks, Joanne. Mary Ann, I know you had a thought.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. But Sarah, I've talked to Sarah about this before, but the land that as you near where you come into Mendon on the right, when you're coming up the hill in the orchard, that 2 acres that's been for sale, I love that spot. And the reason is because it's off the road. You could have a lot of parking and it's visible. And it kind of is in the beginning of Mendon. And I just like it, but I don't know if it could happen.
So this is great. It sounds, Rich, I see your hand up. I'll come right back. It sounds like there's a lot of, we're developing quite the inventory here of kind of potential physical spaces or ideas. I do want to kind of open it up and think if folks have ideas about kind of, are there other ways, acknowledging that sort of physical space may be a super critical piece of building community connection and identity. But I'm curious if folks also have thoughts about other ways or sort of the social architecture. I know it's come up as both the challenge and the asset, this issue of a bedroom community sort of between places. I'm curious, do folks have thoughts on sort of the less tangible aspect of identity or community cohesion, and then maybe some ideas or thoughts to address that? And Rich, I know, I'm sorry, I kind of cut in front of you there. So
that's okay. I wanted to circle around to economic development, and I agree with Al's thoughts. Look for who you want here, and I think we have our economic development and regional planning people with us tonight. So it's maybe we can further elaborate and go into that discussion. But I firmly believe with economic development, a community center will evolve. Recreation will continue and thrive. The sideways of our town can be improved, like the gateways in Rutland City. Welcome to Rutland City, Flower Garden, the whole bit. So there's a lot of other benefits by economic development. And Sarah, help me if I'm correct, but we lost $1 million or more in taxable real estate revenue for those buildings that are vacant. Is that correct? Sarah?
Sarah, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I don't have those numbers in front of me, Rich, but yeah, we saw a significant drop in property values from our hotels over the last 15 years, certainly. Dramatic.
Thank you. That's all from me.
Thanks, Rich. Yeah, Jennifer.
I think that my interest in building a sense of community has to do with the interaction between people, not so much as the building that would happen in. And I'm thinking back to the story circles we did through the Vermont folk life during Irene, and people got into a circle with a tape recorder running and just told their stories. And I'm thinking of the people that I know. We've lived in Mendon for 41 years. I'm looking at Al Wakefield across the way. He used to be my neighbor and now lives across the road. And I'm thinking of the stories we all have, we could tell from all the different backgrounds we've come from, and how wonderful it would be to find a way to share those stories with people old like us and with the kids, and have that sense of community engendered, as well as the building in which we do it. And I think that's an important factor.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. It's a lovely idea. Other thoughts, ideas along those lines? Yeah, Roy with a hand up. And then I see Lacey. Roy, you're muted at the moment.
Thank you. Sorry. It just pops into my head. We got the community center idea, this new Green Mountain thing. Is there some kind of marketing campaign, or not even necessarily to try and draw people in, or maybe businesses, but just for the local community, that would tie in with maybe this, as well as that maybe a community center that's sort of adding to that sense of community identity. So that's just a thought there.
Hey, thanks, Roy. Lacey, did you have a thought? I think you're still muted.
There we go. I have two children at Barstow Memorial School. My oldest has been kindergarten through 8th grade. When I think of community and coming together, the school does a lot of things as far as like with PTO, trying to get all the parents together, the students together from 2 different towns. It's not always easy. There's a lot of people that don't know each other in Mendon, and I think there's a very big gap between like the people of the historical society and then the families with children. I think one of our really good assets is we do have a mini golf. That is the only recreation activity during the like on Route 4 that brings, I think, a lot of our summertime visitors. We do have a great ball field. One of the activities that we do at Barstow to bring people together is we have a group called Helping Hands, and it does teach the younger kids to volunteer, to be involved. They visit the senior center, just kind of get the younger kids speaking to the community, learning, doing a lot more. We also have a school garden. I know a lot of people, like we had mentioned, as far as the environment, the animals, the bugs, how our vegetables do. We have all this like open area as far as like the land of the apartments and motels that are vacant. I think there's a great way we could use them. As far as like the areas you're coming into Mendon, I live by the apple orchard, and a lot of people I think don't realize we are in Mendon. I think they figure from Sugar and Spice up to Pico is Mendon. And like everybody says, you know, you drive through our town, and we want people to stop more. So I think something as far as like during the summer to bring people in besides just the mini golf. Someone had mentioned as far as like having somewhere for gatherings for music. Barstow does have a marching band. So that could be something to bring the community together. The kids can perform. That's just kind of my thought.
Yeah, no, really appreciate it, Lacey. And I think that brings up a good question. I was sort of bouncing around in my head. I mean, what exists in the way of events in Mendon? And sort of, are there regularly scheduled things? Obviously, this last year being an exception, but as we knock on wood, hopefully go back to some sort of normal, are there sort of pillar times that the community comes together centrally? So Al?
Yeah, you're kind of going where I was kind of going, where I was going. it strikes me that it's easier to build off of what you have already than to try and create something, you know, very new and build off of that. And so it'd be very helpful to know, and you touched about it certainly in talking about our assets, but why do people come to Mendon in the first place? I mean, the people who are moving here, Sarah, you know, why they decide on Mendon versus Killington or versus, you know, Middlebury or some other place. There must be some reasons for that that we know already. And if we know those, then how do we figure out how to optimize those things in terms of marketing and promotions and all that? And the business of a recreation center, that sounds interesting, a place for people to go, but I don't know what's happening with young people, families, young people moving into the area with kids. I mean, there's nobody on this video that I've seen other than you, Sarah, and Nick, who's like under 30, which means that kids, we don't have a lot. We don't have a lot of kids around here, and the prospect of having kids in a greater number in the future is relatively small, considering the demographic growth pattern in this country. So that has to be looked at. I know this is an idea session, but we have to look really close at what we're talking about in terms of the building and using a recreation center. But I go back to, what is it we got right now? Why do people come here? And if we identify that, why can't we build off that?
Thanks, Al. I see Jessica's got a hand up, and then we'll go to Mary Ruth afterwards.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to speak to, touch what Lacey touched on, and to Al. I'm with the Barstow School Board, and something we've been trying to do is to bring families in, to show that Barstow is an asset to Mendon. So I know that we're trying to get numbers in that way. Hopefully we've been successful, and some of the people have come here. But, and to what Lacey said, there is a big community sense around the school. However, the school is in Chittenden, and a lot of the activities are Chittenden based. It's a shame that there's a separation where the younger families are kind of separated, it seems, from the rest of the Mendon population if you're not part of that Barstow community. So I don't know what we could do to get maybe Mendon a little more involved in that. And it's not so much Chittenden based, even though Chittenden's wonderful and where the school is wonderful. It's really, focused around Chittenden.
Thanks, Jessica. Do folks, I'm seeing some hands pop up. I guess Mary Ruth, you had a hand up, then we'll go to Leslie.
Yeah, I kind of agree with a lot of what Al was saying, and the building that is still in pretty good shape and is still operational, I think, is the Countryman's Pleasure. Is that still working? Are they still serving dinners and so forth?
Yes.
Would that be, it would be already, it is, if we could maybe work out a deal with them there. I think they have a large enough area that people could meet there. We could have meetings there. That's a space that's already identified, the good parking place. And there's a lot of good ideas flying around here. I'd still like to look and see if there was some kind of a manufacturing business, small manufacturing. I didn't know if Larry Gold could speak to that, he's a techie person. Larry Gold's a techie person.
So
Sorry, speak to what?
What?
Huh?
What would you think if there was a chance that a business building small, not computers, but some kind of a manufacturing around the technical era?
Here in Mendon?
Yes, and some could take over one of the defunct motels up on Route 4.
Right. Sure. No, I don't see any reason why not. I mean, certainly, the concept of having people working in office space within the town limits, whether they're working on tech stuff or not, even if it was like remote workspace where, remember, we used to have places like virtual cafes. You could go in and sit for a few minutes or whatever time you want and connect to your office computer or home computer or whatever. I mean, there's a variety of things that can be had. You know, as an aside, I've been wanting to kind of jump in, but I wasn't sure how excited everybody would be about my opinion about this. We came here 20 years ago. We emigrated from Rutland Town, mostly because of what was happening in the school at the time, the elementary school. And we were looking for just any other place other than Rutland Town School to send David, who's 28 now. But, and Barstow had a great reputation, still does to the best of my knowledge, even though I'm not involved at all anymore because he's moved on, whatever. But rather than, I don't know, the idea of turning Mendon into a destination of some sort or whatever, I'm loving the fact that nobody knows where we are and that I'm halfway between Rutland and Killington, and I can be at the K1 waiting for it to open in 15 minutes from my house. And I could be at the Price Chopper in, 15 minutes in the other direction. And people say, Mendon, where's that? You know where the Sugar and Spice is? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that's where I am.
But thanks, Larry.
But I do love the fact, I do appreciate that the people with kids at the very least are looking for a sense of community here in Rutland. And potentially, if we started having more and more events, family type of events, that people could get together and get to know each other and whatever, I think from that would grow an interest in building a room or whatever. But I think you don't want to just have the room for nothing. You want to have events, and maybe we should start that direction. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. I'm keeping an eye on the clock. We're really coming down to the wire. I see a couple hands up. Roy, Leslie, I know you've had a chance to speak. I hate to do this, but I see Val who hasn't spoken yet. I want to jump to Val quickly, and
Thank
then
you.
we'll quickly come back around.
Okay, I'll try and make this really short. So I am a native of Clarendon, not that far away. Being a Vermonter, I was used to driving where I had to go. Someone mentioned Manchester, and I didn't mind that. Now, when my girls, I have 3 girls in the Barstow school, which is really the primary reason that we did relocate. Even in Clarendon, since we've moved to Mendon, just being aware of all the outdoor amenities is amazing, and how all of my neighbors, I happen to live on a dead end road. I have excellent, we have our own little community. We keep each other in touch about anything that's upcoming that we feel we would share with one another, that we feel is important, that would impact us or our families. I also notice that there are a lot of empty buildings. I don't know who would enjoy driving by them, because you notice them, and anything empty with shrubs growing up around them, it makes you want to jump in and fix them or change them and make them appealing to your eyes. I do love the sense of just being surrounded by nature and keeping Mendon like that. A community center, yes. I think just even getting together monthly somehow and seasonally showing what Mendon has to offer at that time and growing together and having all the education that Mendon does have to offer. All of the people that have lived here for so long that know even so much more than I do to offer my kids. I just think as people, we have a lot to offer and we can teach one another. I'm not trying to say no to a community center. We do need somewhere to gather and to hear one another, if that helps.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really helpful almost summary, Val. I really thank you for kind of pulling some pieces together. I mean, this, to be honest, this is the hardest part always of these sessions is I know we could go on probably for another hour, another half hour, and still almost just when momentum starts picking up. And so I hate to be the sort of bad cop here to put a stop and play time keeper. So I'll only say that sort of moving forward, the next steps, right, with all of these ideas, like I said, Alyssa has been capturing, then kind of next meeting, we all get this chance to come back together and revisit these and think and prioritize and advocate. So really appreciate sort of the diversity of thought that's come up tonight and kind of a lot of similar themes. I think those will continually reemerge. Really thank you all for kind of bringing your A game to this. I mean, it's clear there's a lot going on. I do want to leave some time. We have 4 visiting team members, so they each now officially have about 2 minutes to share short summaries each. And I'll just go kind of randomly. I'm seeing Kevin first, and then let's go to Tyler afterwards.
I almost did the unmute thing. Well, it's really great to learn more about Mendon. As everyone said, if this were a different time, I would have been driving to Mendon a couple hours before the meeting so I could really understand what the community is all about. And it seems like it's really about your natural environment. And I think that is a real strength when you can focus around something like that as a real community asset. So I think the strategy sort of looking forward is how do you continue to take advantage of that asset in a way that doesn't disturb it or devalue it in some way. You know, and I think the interesting reflection on Route 4, sometimes it's nice to be able to get somewhere fast, but you don't want people to get through your town so fast. So finding ways to calm traffic in a way that attracts people to stop, take a break, and visit Mendon. I'm looking forward to seeing what you all come up with.
Thanks, Kevin. Let's go to Tyler next, and then maybe Ed afterwards.
Hey, everyone. I'm Tyler Richardson. I'm the Operations Director for Chamber and Economic Development of the Rutland region. We serve Rutland County. Thank you all for having me here tonight. I've been looking forward to this. I know this has been in the planning works for quite a while, and I commend the Mendon leaders in the community for pushing this forward and making this happen. I just kind of want to bounce off something Kevin said, but I want to touch on 2 points real quickly, and I know my time is limited. You know, a sense of place came up a lot among the conversation, and sort of the perceived lack of sense of place, and how do we generate more of a sense of place. But sounds like there's several folks on the screen here tonight who moved here and have no difficulty telling us why, right? Like, you know why you're here, you know why you're coming here, you know about, and going to Kevin's point about the natural assets. Those natural assets are a part of the land, they're a part of the town, they're not going anywhere. They're what you have to promote, right? They're the reasons why you all live there, and why I live so close to Mendon. I live in Rutland, so I'm in the area. You know, one thing that wasn't really talked about much was the huge growth in remote work that's going to be happening, and so you have an opportunity to sell your town to folks who might be, you know, looking to be a part of it. And part of that sense of place that you guys were all touching on, what's that third place, right? What's that third place in town where you gather? You guys talked a lot about gathering. You know, you go to work, you go home. What's that third place? And it sounds like there's a lot of opportunities kind of aligning to help you kind of figure out what that third place is, whether it's you know, folks who are looking to Vermont to live here more in a more rural community, and taking advantage of the connectivity of people that Mendon has as part of its social infrastructure. But also, you know, the Green Mountain Forestry folks coming in, bringing 50 to 60 employees there. You know, they're going to want to go to coffee shops, and they're going to want to go to restaurants, and they're going to be a captive audience there. So I really like Al's point of identifying what is a target that the community wants in terms of business development, and figuring out ways to incentivize that. I know the town was talking about tax incentives and things like that for a little bit, tax abatement policies and such. So I don't know if there's, I don't know what the town would have in their tool belt to target, to identify and target very specific growth that would be beneficial to where the community wants to go.
Great. Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you all.
Let's go to Ed, and then Trey will take us home.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ed Bove with the Rutland Regional Planning Commission. I'm the director, and thanks for having me tonight. I almost feel like I'm into this too deep because at the RPC, we do a lot with the town, and I live in Rutland Town, but I'm at the top of Killington Avenue, so I'm 10 feet from Mendon. So I might be a little bit biased. My kids ride by Rich's house every single afternoon, and I've lived here and grew up here, so I practically almost feel like I'm from Mendon, even though I'm not. I've pulled a couple things out of this, and I agree with what Tyler and Kevin said. I'm catching a couple of things. One is the dance between economic development and rural and nature, and what does that economic development look like? At the same time, there is a huge opportunity for places that could be redeveloped through some of the blight you see along the corridor. I've heard more than I thought I was going to hear about the historic center and the sense of place, which is great, because I've always thought that Mendon has the pieces, and in fact they do, according to statute, to create a village center designation for some of that area that you go through. So there's a lot of dollars that pass through Mendon on Route 4, and like each car could almost be seen like a dollar bill coming through your town. If it's going too fast, you're not going to capture that. If it's going too slow, you're going to upset people. So what's the right balance? I think there's a lot of corridor work that could happen, and I didn't hear mentioned, but the VTrans District 3 office is in Mendon. There is an opportunity there with VTrans to possibly do some work on that roadway that I think could satisfy a lot of what I'm hearing, to have good, smart development, preserve nature, possibly revive the historic center, create that sense of place for people in that one part of town, and then going up the corridor a little bit more towards the mountain with some of those development opportunities. It seems like a perfect place to do some kind of retail leak analysis for the town that could really say, this is what could be in demand in Mendon, and then use those to almost backfill some of what we're hearing tonight. So I will just leave it at that.
Thanks, Ed.
My main takeaways. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. I know we've just all got a thing. 40 seconds left, Trey. Sorry to cut you short, but hoping you can take us home here.
Well, whether I take you home or not, it sounds like we're all going to get taken there in 30 seconds. I also really enjoyed hearing from people tonight. It's a pleasure to understand this part of Vermont a little bit better. I think the main thing I noticed, and I also, because it's virtual, was able to look at a lot of materials as we're going, is that it's a very, even for Vermont or United States demographics, the number of children in Mendon is a lot lower than anywhere else. If I was trying to decide on a future identity, is how am I bringing more young families in and supporting them? Sense of place, center.
Hello. Hey, Nick.
Hello. Good to be back. Mid-sentence, as always.
Oh no, actually we were
goes.
perfectly rounded up with Ben Doyle ending it right on time. Very well timed.
Well,
sorry.
Good for you guys. I feel bad. I cut Trey off mid-sentence, but
I feel bad. I went too long. Sorry, Trey.
And usually when I come through Mendon, it's to visit you, and it's always a pleasure to see you. So that was you hit on a lot of the right themes there.
So we thank you, everyone. It seems like it went fairly smoothly getting into the breakout rooms. Really great discussion on our end anyways, and it sounds like in the other room too. We are now going to do our second round of breakouts. So bear with us for a moment. We are going to rename ourselves again. So Margaret, if you want to pull that up. So some of you got to do some renaming in the first round. Some of you, this might be a new technique, but I'll walk through it again just to make sure that everyone's got it. So in order to move, this is the first round. You can go to the page.
That's the first round? No.
Oh, sorry. Oh, you did 1 and 2. Okay. Sorry. I thought I was looking for 3 and 4. Okay. So for this second breakout, again, you'll have 2 choices for conversation. Breakout room number 1 is the vitality of our economy. And breakout room number 2 is quality of life and supporting families. What you'll do, there's a couple different ways to rename yourself. If you know how to do it, go ahead and do it. Make sure that you change your number from the first round to which one you want to be in the second round. You can hit participants on the screen, and that'll bring up the participants window, and you can hover over your name and click on rename and add your 1 or your 2 there. Or you can find your picture or your name and right click on the screen, or click even on the 3 little dots that pop up at the top of your little square on the screen. And you'll just want to, if you want to go to the vitality of our economy conversation, you'll add a 1 in front of your name. And if you want to go to quality of life and supporting families, you'll add a 2. So if you want to pull that down, Margaret.
Yeah.
So for those of you that that all just sounds really confusing, that's okay. Stay in the room and you can be sent, Margaret can help assign you to where you need to go. And same, I think we did have maybe 1 or 2 people on the phone. So if you're on the phone, it's easiest just to, I think you'll need to just stay in this main room, and then you can let Margaret know which one that you want to go to. So hopefully everyone feels ready to go. Nick, do you need time?
Yeah, I don't know. Do you know any jokes, Jenna? Maybe just
No.
another like a minute here. I'm desperately trying to sort, folks.
I think we're better off just hanging out than hearing any jokes that I would have to share. So
All right,
let's
making
just wait.
progress. Almost there. I'll sound off.
Mary, do you have a question to ask?
Are we basically just swapping like we did the vitality? Now I want to go to number 1. I want to do the opposite of what I did.
So in the last one, I think you were in community connection, identity, and
Oh,
sense
okay.
of place. Is that right?
All right.
So this one,
Okay.
you have 2 new choices.
Okay.
So
I
for
wanna
this
go
one,
to
you
the-
can either
and I
go
think-
to the vitality of our economy or quality of life and supporting family.
I think I want to do the economy vitality business.
Okay. So if it's
I
okay
got
with you, we
one.
can just put a 1, or Nick, maybe you can
I
assign
got you
Mary.
there, Mary. Yep.
Okay.
All right. So I think we're mostly there. There's a couple of folks who still haven't retitled, but
Al,
other
and
than
1.
that, I guess Margaret will hang back again.
Yeah. Al, were you just saying 1?
Yeah, please.
Okay, we can put Al in 1. All right, so Nick, why don't you go ahead and send us away, and then the folks left can tell Margaret where they want to be.
Hi, folks. Can people hear me? Okay, great. We'll wait just a second for the unassigned participants to drop in one way and another. And this session will be on quality of life and supporting families for the future of Mendon. So why don't we, the great thing is we've been through this once, right? So we know we're going to spend about 15 minutes talking about the assets around the quality of life. What's really great? What supports are there for families now? What are the assets? And we're not trying to dig in and do long evaluations of them. We're trying to build a list. And then we're going to think about challenges and opportunities around the quality of life and around supporting families. And then we're going to think, well, what could be done? If we lined up as a community, what are we going to do? what's going to happen next month is you're going to have these ideas all listed on a wall. It's like the wall on a virtual gymnasium. And you're going to have the opportunity to say, well, of all these ideas, that's the one that's going to be the most dynamic thing to advance the life of families and the quality of life in general here in the community. So what we're trying to do tonight is not make decisions, not do deep analysis or evaluation of the ideas, but it's get as many ideas as we can on the table. So I'm going to ask people not to, go into a long description of their idea, but instead share the idea, and we'll see how much time we have and how fast things go. But it's great to see everyone, and let's go ahead and get started. So we have about 15 minutes to describe, what's good in Mendon. What are some of the assets that you have around quality of life and supporting families? Why do you want to be there? Why do you want to raise children there? Who'd like to start? Roy, thanks.
Yeah, sure. Just Barstow, I think, is something that's been mentioned many times. And school choice, just throw that in there as well.
So are you part of the Barstow district with Chittenden, and your kids automatically go to Barstow?
That's right.
And so then they can choose whether they go to high school in Rutland or Woodstock or wherever.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. That's a great asset. Other assets for quality of life and for children.
Well, we have the playground and the ball fields on South Mendon Road, as well as there's some very family-friendly hiking trails here as well. And I think Sugar and Spice and Mendon Mini Golf are both great family assets in Mendon.
Great. What are the hiking trails like? Are they in the National Forest, or are they lower? Or
They actually go right off the back of the baseball field at the little town park and ball fields there.
Oh.
And because I have young kids and I live on that road, I can tell you they're very family friendly and we use them all the time.
Sweet. Nice. What other assets do you have that contribute to the quality of life in Mendon?
Well, the other thing I think that makes it particularly family friendly, probably the reason most of us live here, is because it is very convenient to get to both Rutland City and to Killington or Pico.
Yeah, it's got a great mid location, huh? What are some of the other assets for supporting families here? Yes, go ahead, Larry.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by supporting families. It sounds simple, like a simple concept, but for example, somebody just mentioned one of the biggest assets here is the fact that besides that we're only 15 minutes from Rutland, we're 15 minutes from Killington and Pico, the Pico Ski Club. We raised our kid at the Pico Ski Club.
Sure.
That's what, from 3 years old. It is the family mountain.
That's right.
It's one of the biggest assets around here, yet we keep talking about Mendon. Well, okay, great. But, here we are at the base of the single largest, basically, ski area in the Northeast of America.
Okay, so let's consider that an asset, that you're so close to the family mountain and also to Killington and all the assets up there.
Yeah, big asset.
Other assets.
People here because of that.
Yeah, so when we say quality of life and supporting families, think of where these words came from. A steering committee of residents of Mendon came up with the names of these things, and they did so partly because they were thinking about families, challenges that families may have, some of the positive things about quality of life, and some of the things that they were worried about when it came to quality of life. And they merged these things all together into that big title, okay? So we have to do some unpacking. They aren't the authorities on what's in this. It's whatever comes up in this conversation. What other assets do you have around quality of life in Mendon? Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
The fact that there's nobody here.
There's some open space and
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the concept of, listen, how many people have brought up the thing about the hiking trails, going out into the woods, the animals that are all around here? I mean, I've got more animals. I mean, it's like a lot, wildlife refuge out here.
no kidding. You're living
Yeah.
in nature out there. What are some of the animal species you see?
Oh, you want the list? Oh my goodness. Okay. From blue herons to otters to the nesting ducks that come in every spring and fall on their way north and on their way south, that kind of live in our pond for a few weeks or whatever, sometimes have babies and stuff like that. The fact that I tried, I thought stocking my pond, a bunch of years back would be a great thing. So I went down to the hatchery. I bought 25 trout, put them in my pond. Turned out that was more of an exercise in feeding the local wildlife. I had a couple of otters move in, but deer constantly on this path. There was a family or a couple of families of 6 to 8 deer that are constantly coming through here. Bear. I have pictures of moose in my backyard. The list goes on.
Okay, thank you. So really the opportunity to be close to nature, to wildlife. Are there other quality of life? Family?
Yeah, we call it like living in the woods.
Yeah, living in the woods. Thanks, Larry.
And only 15 minutes from Killington.
Close to Killington. Other folks, yes, Al.
I have Larry come to my house every once in a while. That's like an asset.
Your neighbors keep you lively.
Oh, talk about animals. Yeah. No. Yeah, we touched around it, I guess, in the last meeting in a couple of ways, but but we need to spend some time on this, because I think one of the prime assets in this community is the community itself. I moved here, as Jennifer Bagley would say, 30 years ago. I moved right down the road from them, and my first neighbor was their kid coming to the door and saying, hi, you new here, who are you? And the second question was, are there any kids here? And a week later they had a party on Fred's, no, it wasn't on Fred, it was Barnson's yard, and one of the other doctors living in the neighborhood, and welcomed me to the neighborhood. So there were 10 or 12 neighbors in this little circle that welcomed me. Okay, so I moved out of there and moved out to Pitts Ford. And Pitts Ford is in the middle of nowhere from my perspective. And it was really difficult to know neighbors up here because everybody's too far apart. I moved back here subsequently where I am right now, and I'm right down the street from Val. And whereas I thought Fred and Jennifer had the greatest neighborhood in the whole wide world as a part of that, this is really the greatest neighborhood in the whole wide world. It's because of the people, and it's something Val, I think, mentioned. We have a communications thing going on here. Anybody that has an issue, needs a set of pliers, or sees a moose, Larry's moose in our yard, somebody's on the phone or texting saying, did you see that? So there's a tremendous sense. Somebody needed a ride a week ago. So just downtown, there's a tremendous sense of community in this. I think we're 3/4 of a mile long on Cream Hill Road. Yeah. And I got to tell you, if you talk about sense of community, if every neighborhood did what the neighborhood across the road did with me and what this neighborhood does, we'd have an unbelievable sense of quality of life and sense of neighborhood, if you will.
Awesome. So neighborliness is just
neighborliness. Yeah.
Neighborliness. Great. What other assets does Mendon have? What other good things for quality of life or supporting families? We've got a good school. Are there other things going on for children? Are there activities or areas for them to have fun or assets? Lacey. You're muted, Lacey.
There we go. Mendon does have a rec as far as like for playing sports. Most of the sports are through the associated with Rutland Rec as far as they do the scheduling of the teams and getting teams together. All Mendon residents, kids can play. Most of our players are through Barstow because we usually have enough as far as with Chittenden and Mendon. But as far as programs for kids, we have the rec.
And that's the same place that has the hiking trails?
There is what it's called the BYC. It's Barstow Youth Club,
Oh,
but it is for all Mendon residents and all Chittenden residents, as far as that way the kids can play on the same team from our community.
mhm, great. And is there a building? Is there, or it's ball fields?
There is not a building. The BYC plays on the ball field there, but they do also play as far as like for Pittsford, they play at the Pittsford Rec. Rutland, I'm not sure where they would be playing now, but as far as for Rutland Town, we play over at Northwood
Okay.
where they
But
have their,
That's the rec facility that people were talking about earlier?
yes,
Okay.
over Danielle had mentioned.
Okay, great. Other assets for families, for youth, events, activities, or things that you think make for a strong quality of life in the community, aside from being close to nature, the neighborliness, good people, welcoming. Are there other natural or human assets? Are there any ponds or waterways or public access to water or any of that? Swimming holes? Al?
Well, yeah, there are. I've renamed Kent Pond, which doesn't happen to be in Mendon, happens to be in Killington, but Killington's the asset, right? And I've renamed Kent Pond Wakeful Nest Pond, because it's a great place to go and sit and read and play some music and just think and make some, quiet telephone calls, etc. But that's within 8 minutes of my house. Happens to be in Killington, but that's a tremendous asset. But what is in Mendon on Wheelerville Road, there are a couple of places along the stream there where the water is just running down, 90% of the year. Great little parking space to go and park and do kind of the same thing I do in Wakeful Nest Pond. Not to mention that you can walk on the road once you get off Route 4. You've got hills, you've got valleys, you've got, pastoral scenes, you've got a little bit of everything. So it's a wonderful area just to stroll around and walk through. Each road has its own ambiance and its own set of assets and liabilities, if you will.
Yeah, mostly it's woods. Are there some open lands, and are there any farms in town still?
Somebody else is better able to answer that than I don't see farms. I do see places with horses, and I do see one or two places with a cow here and there, and then all the wild animals that Larry talked about.
Great. Anyone else have a sense of a community asset that contributes to the quality of life, like why you would want to live there, or assets for children and families that make it a strong place for families to live? Let's turn, go ahead, Patty.
So my kids are older, but I'm assuming these assets still exist. They aren't in Mendon, they're in Rutland, but the Rutland Library always ran great programs for the kids. And of course, the Wonder Feet Children's Museum is a huge asset. So they would be on my list.
Which started in the community process that we did with Rutland.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's terrific. And I know there's a ton of other assets in Rutland that give your kids the opportunity to participate in all kinds of richness. You're not in the city, but you're close enough. And everyone's been talking about that proximity. Let's turn a corner and think about challenges. And if someone comes up with another asset, that's okay. I don't know, I don't live in town, and I don't know why the steering committee felt it was really important to talk about quality of life and supporting families. But are there families that are confronting significant challenges? Are there challenges to youth in the community? What are some of the challenges to the quality of life? And Laura, it looks like you have a thought.
Sure. This is a lovely town to live in, and we've raised our kids
here all up through Barstow and high school, but you do need a car to be a good parent here. It's horrible to say that, but it's true. And I also work at Barstow part-time, so I see those, what I'll call more transient families, come in and out, and they're not able to stay at our school because they might not have we don't have the best lower income housing or transportation options for those families. They may work up on the mountain, which is an asset to us, an employment asset, and the bus, which is a great transportation aspect, can take them to work or down to the grocery store, but it can't bring them to the parent-teacher conference over in Barstow.
Right.
And it can't pick up the kids from soccer practice and bring them home.
Mhm.
So then those kids don't always have that great opportunities. So it is a wonderful place to have kids, but there are definitely families that struggled.
Yeah.
And then as a mom with transportation, you recognize that you are either, I live up at the top, I live up in Robinwood by Pico. So I'm running down to Danielle's house, which to take the kids to the game that's at the field at our rec field, or the game is, I got to take someone to Girls on the Run over at Barstow, which is really in Chittenden.
Everyone becomes a soccer mom, basically.
Yes,
If you're
yes.
or your children are isolated.
Yes, and I hear lots of moms talk about that phenomenon. And I heard Larry talk about the ski club where my kids grew up also. That is, of course, just a smidge into Killington, and it's an asset, but that's a place where kids can be together.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID.
Yeah.
But we don't have in town a lot of those great together places where you can just go with your kids where
Yeah.
they can meet up.
This
It's
is
like
it.
we need one more playground somewhere that has, has just a bit more of an intergenerational family bent, but also we have months of, I'll say, mediocre weather. So if you wanted to bring grandma, it needs a bit of an indoor ability or something.
Yeah, let's come back to this as we think about things that could be done, because this theme has been threading through everything in our discussions. Al.
Yeah, Laura brings up, it triggers a point for me. If you drive around Vermont and you stay on Route 4, you stay on Route 100 or 103 or whatever, you have a very different impression of Vermont than if you go off on some of the side roads. And since the pandemic, my wife and I, this a part of our Friday date is to drive around places in Vermont and have dinner along, waterways, but drive roads that I would probably not go on normally. And the amount of poverty that we see on those roads is immense. Now,
Is that
I
right?
think, oh yeah, I think we're fortunate that not as much exists in Mendon, but I don't know that, but I certainly know that it exists in Chittenden, which is right next door here, which is where Barstow is.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether those people are covered in what you're doing. They are not, as I look at the people who, whose faces I see, many of whom I know, they are not these people because for whatever reason, they don't participate, they don't have access. So there may be a whole body of people for who, we talk about quality of life, they will be missing from this conversation.
So kids whose families are doing pretty well and have a car and have the resources to participate at Pico and so forth are doing all right and they get down to Rutland. But those families that don't have resources and may be struggling, their kids are going to be more isolated. And I'm sure people from the school, we always find that people from the school kind of know a lot of the family stories, and we don't want to hear particular stories, but are there needs that you see out in the community that really we just ought to put on the table in terms of some of the challenges that people are facing? And it's fine to use the chat. If anyone wants to throw ideas in the chat, we'll gather them for later, and Alyssa will catalog this all together. But other challenges around families, children, quality of life in the community. Danielle.
Well, I think, when hearing in the last group about like the identity of Mendon, I think for a lot of people, when they were talking about like, attracting businesses or something to Mendon, and people were saying, well, I moved here because I like that it's in the middle of nowhere, and I like that we just kind of moved here for the school and the nature, and we don't necessarily want to see that stuff. I think that Mendon still has that appeal for a lot of people. Honestly, when it comes to attracting young families, if there were houses available in Mendon, people would buy them and live in them. But we have a shortage of housing for young families. And honestly, I feel like some of those blighted properties on Route 4 where there are large old hotels would be better off being used to turn into a family housing development similar to Eastridge Acres or Brookwood. Those houses would fill up immediately and add to our tax base. And, if we are going to see a, expansion of the Forest Service on Route 4, and maybe there's room to have like another set of town trails or another town playground or something further up on that end of Route 4. I think that would be great as well, to have a place for those families to congregate together, because I think that is one thing that is lacking in Mendon, a place for families to congregate, because our school is based in another town. But honestly, I think if there was houses for sale, we would see that Mendon still has that appeal as like the best bedroom community in Rutland County.
But let's
I honestly think like that's probably more useful for us than anything else.
Okay, let's come back to both of those things, because there are two big ideas there. One is housing, advancing affordable housing, and one is really looking at that recreation resource and what could be done to provide more stimulation. I want to dig in a little bit more on the challenges. And one of the things that Laura said was there are transient families that kind of come, they may work part seasonally at the mountain or whatever, but they can't stay. And clearly their kids are getting jerked from place to place because they can't afford to live in a town like Mendon, maybe. And so that's kind of an ongoing challenge. And I'll turn to Roy, who's got his hand officially up to share his perspective on the challenges that the community faces around these issues.
We've done a fair amount of talking about a place, community center, the rec center, and things like that, but events. And I'm thinking like when we first came, we went to the event at Barstow. They have something at the beginning of school year where they had like a fair kind of thing. And why couldn't Mendon do something like that for the kids in particular? And you could even have it with Barstow, but have it not at school, right? Potentially, maybe at the rec center. But yeah, like these yearly events that came up in the previous thing, and I think that's really something that could draw people and get that sense of community, but also support families.
Yeah, we'll come back to this one too. But are there events right now, or is there not really? What with COVID and all?
Right, there aren't, as far as I know. There might be some, but not very many.
Yes, Lacey.
The BYC is going to have a field cleanup day at the rec, where the ball field is, and we now have a basketball court there. Basically go through, clean up any brush, the leaves from last year. I believe it may have been 2 years ago, I had gotten a flyer in the mail, which I meant to ask Sarah in the other meeting. They did used to have a Mendon day at the rec, and I think they had like hot dogs, and it was just inviting everybody there. I had just gotten a flyer in the mail, and I had been out of town, and so I missed it. And I didn't know if that was something that they were going to try and bring back possibly this summer or next year.
Right. But there's no Mendon day now.
Yeah, Lacey, we did have a town picnic, at the ball field, and I think Jennifer Bagley's maybe the one who organizes that, but I think the plan is to go back to doing that every summer once we're allowed to gather together again. But that is basically the only Mendon event besides.
I mean, it sounds like there's no committee that works on events. There's no one who's sort of in charge of trying to bring the community together regularly. Not seeing any response on that, so I'm assuming. So people mentioned also the transportation challenge of, if you got to have a car, you got to be ushering your kids around. If you don't, and you're a family that lacks transportation options, you're really hurt by that. what are the childcare options? You know, what happens if you've got little kids, you're bringing your kids to school and then you've got to go to work? Anyone, are there any options?
Marianne,
Yeah, Marianne.
I'm remembering a lot of things for when my kids were little. No, there's no childcare, at least there wasn't for me. But one of the things that gets really tricky is in regards to the car is when you have a child in kindergarten and a child in elementary school and you have one in high school. So you have to pick up and drop off. I mean, you're in your car all the time because you have to get the person in high school.
There's not a bus route up from Rutland High that would
I
come
think
up?
there is a bus, but nobody took it.
Yeah, okay. And if you take the bus, you can't participate in after-school activities.
Exactly.
Or you may get dropped off somewhere, but it's not necessarily your door.
Right. So, you know, as far as Barstow, if you participated there with sports mostly, that was an activity, but there were no like dance classes or any other things that kids could participate in. There was no place for them to go.
So I want to ask a little bit of a challenging question. It's a tough question. You know, we've been invited into communities that have had deep conversations about poverty and deep conversations about everything from opioids to substance use in general in Bennington and St. Johnsbury and Swanton. Are there issues with families and youth around substance challenges? Is it something that's talked about, or is it not really a big issue? Go ahead, Laura.
I'm sure we're no different than any other community. On the surface, do we appear a little bit shinier? Yes, we do. I mean, this conversation highlights our shiny community involvement and why people like to live here, mostly to recreate outdoors and be a part of a nice place to live. But do those things exist? Sure, we're no better than anybody else. Do we have poverty? We do. It generally sometimes is more transient than you might see it through school because a kid will come into a class, but he won't stay the whole school year.
Where it sounds like there's someone's described a lot of really pretty nice neighborhoods, and there's probably oftentimes wealth aggregates and poverty aggregates. Are there parts of town that are more affordable or that have less resources, or is Mendon fairly mixed in terms of how people live?
Question, because I'm not sure that we have a cluster of complete poverty area.
Yeah. Okay. Roy's been waiting.
I'm
Roy,
wondering, I'm new to town, but the Route 4 corridor, I think, is pretty affordable and not such a great place to live.
yeah,
I don't want to step on any toes, right? I mean, whatever, but I'm guessing.
Everyone points to Route 4 and the decay of old hotel buildings or buildings that are relatively derelict. Has there ever been, what are some of the challenges of Route 4 in terms of any of these issues? And has there been work done on Route 4? Has the town ever had a Route 4 redevelopment committee, or has there been practical action done around some of the decline of business on Route 4? Okay.
I think that the road is, well, I don't know if it would be called an interstate, but it's state controlled.
It's probably a federal highway, right? And so
Yeah.
the feds make the rules, and
you can't really mess around with it too
Right.
much.
Right. Okay. Are there other things that you see as challenges for youth that are particularly important to people in town? Before we turn a corner, because I know we've got at least 5 big ideas that I've heard already for potential action areas, but are there any other challenges that should be listed? All right, let's turn a corner then. If you were thinking about the future of Mendon in terms of quality of life issues and issues around supporting families, what would you want to work to make happen for the future of Mendon? Roy, is your hand up or is that just the legacy hand?
Legacy hand, but
Okay.
I will throw out my events thing. I mean, you know, while we're going to that direction, you know, a yearly event or, you know, whatever.
We have seen towns like Rutland built Friday Night Live from one of these processes. Johnson built Thursday Night Live. They basically, different groups put on music shows on the green and everybody in town comes. And it's incredibly fun and unifying. Have people done that sort of stuff in Mendon? Yes, go ahead, Lacey.
I had mentioned in the other group as far as the separation between our older community and our younger community. And they had mentioned as far as like a meeting place. And I don't think they realize that Barstow does have a marching band. Many of our students perform in the Rutland Parade, and the PTO has had a float, I believe 2, maybe 3 years. And the marching band does perform, and that would be something that I would like to see bring our younger group and our older group together, is having somewhere for our families and our older residents come together and get to know each other.
That's great. What would that kind of place be? Where would it be? How would it work, Lacey? Have you got any ideas?
Well, there was a lot of mention as far as like the unused motels that are no longer there. Like Laura had touched base as far as like the different communities being accessible for all families and bringing more students, and just like maybe single parents as far as like wanting to move to the community, move out of Rutland. The housing is high. There's not a lot for our kids to bring the community together. Community day would be great. The only place we really have is our Mendon Rec Field. And I think that is, there's a lot that, as far as bringing a community together, we would have to figure out where, how much, and who's in.
Well, in the last session, you brought up a couple of intriguing ideas around some of the former hotel properties. One being that there could be affordable housing that would be developed there that would potentially support some of that younger families that currently are transient and maybe can't stay the year round. And you also had the idea that maybe one of those buildings could be converted to a community center that would do something of what you're describing. Are there obvious buildings on Route 4 that would be places that, if a task force was formed to develop a community center or a task force was formed to develop housing, are there particular properties that would be the obvious first places to look? You're nodding, Laura.
Sure. I mean, the Econo Lodge, we call it the Econo Lodge. It doesn't say that, but it's just to the left of where they're going to be, or south, I guess, or not south, west, just to the west of where they're going to be building the new Forest Park, you know, and it's been gated off for years now. There's also a smaller hotel that the construction workers are parking at, building the state forest park. The Edelweiss has sat very idle for a long time. It's probably in the most disrepair. There's a vacant restaurant which still has the Snow Angel sign on it, which actually had been redone when it was the restaurant. It's been vacant for at least 5 years now.
So
So there are structures.
Yeah.
All of these structures would need some repair and are probably have lots of nice back taxes or back liens on the Alpine pipeline, which is our septic
Yeah.
pipeline. But
In the previous conversation, Al Wakefield said, you know, if you're working on economic development or, you know, building for the future of the community, you'd want to start with where you are, and you'd want to do sort of an inventory of where you are. Has anyone ever, either the planning commission or the select board or the regional planning commission, has there ever been a look at an inventory of those Route 4 assets towards potential redevelopment? And Ed, if you want to chime in, go ahead, Ed. Is there some history on this?
Yeah, a little bit. They started to do some work when we were updating the town plan on that inventory, but it never really took off. But that did come up, and some people started to go out and mark off properties, but
No
it could
kidding.
be done more formally.
Yeah. So it wasn't like a funded endeavor with a planning grant and a lot of energy behind it.
Well, it went through the municipal planning grant to do the town plan work. So indirectly it came off of that, but it wasn't directly funded.
Okay. All right. Yes, Danielle.
So I very much appreciate Laura going through the list of all of those properties on Route 4, because I do think, like, as far as a community center goes, like what Mendon needs does not need to be very large at all, because mainly we're going to be using it for town meeting, and then like maybe some small groups or like clubs or something that's going to meet there, but it doesn't need to be anything elaborate by any means. To me, a small, simple community center that, you know, can be used, can be, you know, sign up, rent your space, and then like maybe use a little bit of the surrounding land to do like a natural playground or something that is easily accessible for both kids and maybe older people who have a little bit more limited mobility, would be something really unique that our families could use. But also, you know, when we're talking about we drive the 10 minutes or 15 minutes into Rutland, families in Rutland might want to drive the 10 or 15 minutes to come use a nice natural playground that is accessible for multi-generations here in Mendon.
Nice thought, Danielle. Let me ask, do people have, I don't want to stick too long on one concept like a community center, but since it's come up repeatedly, do people have any points of vision for other functions that you would want to have happen in a center? If you were to, if Community Energy United to drive forward and develop a community center, are there other things you'd want to see as functions of that center that haven't been mentioned yet?
Well, maybe just a space for, like, you know, we do have a historical society. Could they meet there? You know, when BYC has their meetings, you know, they're usually meeting in Barstow, but could they alternate between Barstow and Mendon to get more Mendon families involved? You know, could there be like a senior citizen exercise class that happens there, or, you know, art classes that happen there? Like, I'm sure if there was a space, it would get used for some of those things. But like I'm saying, I don't think it needs to be fancy. And I think if it has an outdoor component as well as an indoor component, it would get used, you know, that much more.
Yeah.
And just the concept of there's a place where families are running into each other.
Yeah,
Really.
I appreciate that. That's great thinking. Now, one of the issues that's been left hanging, and Jessica's waiting, and then I'll go to Al, but the concept of preschool or early essential education, there's nothing in town. Everyone has to go to Rutland if they need that. Is that a feature that is possible to think about, or is that not necessary up here? Yes, Laura, and then we'll go to Jessica and then Al.
I mean, we do have preschool. It is at Barstow. Mendon.
Oh, you do?
It is free. It is, however, it is not super ideal, even though I do work there and I love it and I love working that program. It's a great program. It's 10 hours a week, and it's kind of at odd times. It's on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you're 3, you come from 7:45 till 10:45. And if you're 4, you come from 11:45 to 2:45 or something. It's very unfriendly for working families. There's no transportation. So you have to bring this child there and pick them up. So if we
Yeah.
do have some alternatives, that would be nice. I also think about the library downtown that our town pays into, but it's thinking of moving even a tad further away from us. Could we even just have a satellite book share room? You know, there's so many nice things. We could also have a little satellite food pantry in our community
Yeah.
center. There's little things that we could fill that up easily.
Yeah.
We just
So,
miniature, like Daniel said, doesn't need to be fancy, miniature versions of, you know, a community center.
right. It doesn't need to, it's not the Burlington Community Center in Mendon. Okay, so Alyssa's capturing notes on all of this. I want to go to Jessica, and then Al's been waiting patiently. Jessica?
Yeah, a lot of what I was thinking about has already been captured pretty much. I think if we had a building, it would get used. A lot of times through the school functions, a lot of things end up going to Chittenden for, it goes to the Grange, or if they're looking for something like that for fundraising events, or they use the library over there. And I just think it's because that's the only space that's available. And it's true, we have nowhere for families to go and congregate. A senior center, a bingo night for somebody. I mean, they do a lot of these little things in Chittenden. And I think we can mirror a lot here in Mendon.
Yeah, so there's nowhere right now. Want to turn to Al. What's your idea, Al?
Yeah, this may be more economic development as I think about it, just going back to the communication challenges that we have, you know, in this area in general. But if there were incubator space for small businesses, or a place where, you know, one person shop could go and be assured that, you know, she or he could communicate around the country and around the world dependably, that might be a good use for a single place that was wired properly.
Maybe even a room with a few corrals and high-speed internet. And
that's exactly
this is
right.
a day where there's significant federal investment in community development potential. So
yeah,
there's a way to combine some function. Anyway, this is really interesting. Are there, and we've been concentrating a little bit on community center because it feels like, in a way, the previous conversation we had in here on building a sense of place and unity and all that had a lot to do with having a place to come together, that just doesn't happen very much naturally in the community. But I don't want to just be stuck there. Are there other ideas around improving the quality of life or supporting families that really haven't, you know, we've been in this niche? Are there other ways or ideas about what people need that might benefit people of
I
different?
have an idea.
Yes, Mary Ann.
On the center though, there is a very active senior group in Mendon. So I'm sure they would utilize it. And there's also the Historical Society.
Okay.
But one of my neighbors, I don't think she's on tonight. She probably had something else going on, but she mentioned that it would, like in Europe and other countries, that some communities become wellness communities and they foster wellness. And she thought that would be an interesting idea for Mendon, that it could be a wellness community.
That's so
I thought I'd share that.
Yeah, there was a lot of history, and someone brought up the history of town a couple times. Pittsford and other towns in the area often had significant spas. People came to Rutland County for the waters. People came to stay together in these big inns that were with fresh air. And, you know, maybe there's an opportunity. It feels like people in post-COVID are going to want to connect to nature, and people talk about that as a huge asset in Mendon. Other ideas about potential ways to improve the quality of life and support families. And it can range from economic development, as Al's brought up, to transportation, community services. Are there other services that are missing? Is Mendon a safe place?
Yeah.
No one's brought up police protection or bad roads, or no one's even talked about any of those kinds of things. Are things pretty good, Danielle?
I would say yes on all those fronts. I think we're probably pretty known for being a safe community and all those other things. I think when it comes to what families are looking for, like I said, I think if we see it, if a house comes on the market in Mendon, it gets sold right away because people want to move here. I think really it's just about giving the families that are here, and I don't just mean families with young kids. I mean families that are a retired couple, just a place where those people can run into each other, because the way we are set up, with Route 4 going through it, and there's not a town center, and there's not, a little area with shops or whatever, there isn't necessarily an opportunity to bump into other people who live in Mendon unless they live on your street. So I think what we're hearing, when talking about the community center or talking about bringing back events, it's really just how do we manufacture those opportunities where people are in the same place and have an opportunity to meet the people from the other end of Mendon or whatever that might be.
And so it's interesting. Someone used the word third space earlier, and you think of your post office where you bump elbows, or lots of places it's the transfer station or the dump where you have to go and everybody kind of meets there.
Right. We don't have a post office, and our transfer station's in Rutland City, and our school's in Chittenden. So you're seeing
You don't have a bank. Do you have a pub or a coffee shop, or are there other business, like and Al also brought this up in the earlier session, are there particular kinds of businesses that you would like to try to attract to Mendon and maybe have the whole community rally around supporting them so that they're successful? Has that kind of thinking or that kind of work been done?
I would personally love a gas station in Mendon if we could ever get one anywhere.
Yeah, go downhill, huh? Or uphill? Okay. Other thoughts on amenities that would improve the quality of life?
Well, just to go back to what Jessica said, in Chittenden, there is like a little general store, and it used to have a gas station. It doesn't have a gas station anymore. But regardless, when it was a gas station, when it's now just a general store, it is the place in Chittenden where everybody bumps into everybody. And so, yeah, even if there was just like a small general store with a gas station, you would surely find a lot of different people from the community mixing and mingling. Like the one in Chittenden has like a very small deli and coffee from the, carafe. Like we're not talking anything fancy, and you still see plenty of people congregating there.
Is there a historic site on Route 4 that used to have a general store or used to have more of a center before the road was widened and the speeds increased, and back in the stagecoach days? What is it like in that bend in the corner near the town offices, or was there a bit of a center there?
Yeah, we had the Mendon Country Store, which also, and then Jesse had it. Jesse Bridge, our town administrator, she had it for a while also, and it was still a good spot for breakfast. It is now a coffee shop, which is great coffee, but it's not open as diversely as it was, and it doesn't post, I'd say, what I'd call the general merchandise at this time. So it's no longer the stopping place unless you want that very nice coffee, and they are open.
What's that called?
What's it called?
The Palo Coffee.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Palo Coffee.
Palo Coffee.
Everyone just still calls it in the Mendon Country Store, but it's like across from the town hall.
Okay.
And a very nice family owns it. And she makes great empanadas. And but it's not the everything stop store. And boy, gosh, again, it would be nice if you could combine some of these, like it was a little post office, and it was a gas station, and it was a market.
Yeah. Are there folks who haven't had a chance to speak yet that want to share an idea that they would have for the future of Mendon? I know I can see a couple of you. Yes, Al.
Well, just going to continue the conversation on that grocery store. I've been here now, I guess, through 3 owners, and I don't know why. I mean, we all have our own personal opinions about, why we didn't shop there as much as we could. But if you think about it, the nearest shopping is in Killington, which from my road is 5 miles away. That's not, if you're driving, that's an easy little commute, but it's 5 miles away. The other side, and that's in Killington, the other side is Rutland, which is 6, 7 miles away. And you just think logically that if there are a place where you could get your daily needs and have a good cup of coffee and a mixture, whatever, you do some kind of market study, but there's just got to be room for a place where people go to shop to meet their daily needs, which could be a gathering spot, as it was at least in part previously.
Okay, great. The other things that could be done, a couple people mentioned activities and events for families as an idea. Does anyone have any other, again, we're not deciding anything today, we're not forming a committee tonight, but are there other ideas for activities or events that would improve the quality of life or make it a better place for families and children? Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
I think someone mentioned this, like we need to tag team on things that are already happening. We're not a huge town, so it's not necessarily the type of town where we can get critical mass at any one moment, which is why we're looking for this casual place. But we were always known for having cake on our voting days, like, and COVID we had to stop that for COVID, but like something cute like that. Like if you went in to vote into the town hall, we always had cake, and that is like bonus. And other towns I see always do something on Green Up Day. They add on to Green Up Day and you bring it to the transfer station, but like Danielle mentioned, we don't have the transfer station, and they had donuts, or they had a cookout or something like that. Or on town meeting day, they had a potluck. But we have had trouble finding a spot for our town meeting day just due to the change of hands of some of the larger spaces in the last couple years. So just adding on to some of the things that are already going on with things that other towns are already doing would be nice.
Yeah, let me ask you, when you say we've been doing that, are there engaged citizens kinds of issues, or is it the select board does what it can, the planning commission does what it can?
Yeah, the folks that work in our office, they get the cake. Yeah, they're very invested in voting day, and so yes, they lead that tradition.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like there's opportunities for leadership around any number of these different issues. Does anyone have a point of inspiration that they'd like to make before we turn it to the visiting team for them to share their reflections?
Oh, I had one more thing to add around events.
Thanks, Danielle.
Which is, so in Chittenden, they have the Grange. It is so far away from anything, especially if you're trying to get there from Mendon. It is ridiculous. It's like a half an hour drive. But my point is, they do a lot of stuff there that I do think we could mimic in Mendon. Barstow has done some like fundraisers for class trips and stuff there, like a spaghetti supper. You could, if you have a building, you can do a spaghetti supper. Like that doesn't require much. And that's like, again, a great opportunity just to get like multi-generations in the same building. Like, it could be the historical society or something that's hosting a dinner like that. Or also at the Grange, they do the annual fundraiser for the fireworks at Chittenden Day. Which is like a turkey dinner or whatever. And the same thing, like we could, the historical society or whoever could be doing something like that in Mendon. And it's just like, you put the one thing on your calendar and you're going to see the old people and the young people and everyone in between. And it's just like, a thing you look forward to that's part of your town's character. If we had a space, the people that are here in Mendon would be making those things happen. I have no doubt about it because they already are those type of people.
Boy, I see heads nodding. That's pretty intriguing to think that you know, we see this stuff happen, you know, that people go and they say, we're going to organize and do this. And so it's really intriguing to see there's several really concrete ideas that have been brought into this conversation that will get on the wall and that people will be able to choose from and choose to actually take action and make them happen. And resources follow those who are organized to do work. And so we'll be interested to see what happens next month, I think the 26th. I do want to turn a corner. This is the last time that our visiting team members who are here tonight are going to have a chance to share reflection. So I want to give them a couple of minutes. And I'm going to start with Trey, who got cut off kind of rudely. The last buzzer of the electronic system shut him down. So we'd love to hear your perspective, Trey, on what you heard, some of the key themes. And, you know, we're obviously not here to you know, provide the answers because no one has the answers any better than people in Mendon, but to share your perspective on some of what you've heard, Trey.
Hello.
Yeah,
You'll
we
hear
can
me
hear you.
again. I'm experiencing worse than normal connectivity here in Calais, Vermont tonight, and so it has cut out a couple of times. I don't know if this is coming through loud and clear or not, but
It is.
thumbs up. Okay. If I get cut off again, you can, Paul, please feel free to move on, and I'm sorry about that. I was in two very similar themed conversations. So what I was going to say the last time, I think, does carry over into this one, which is that what I heard tonight is so many assets, especially the assets around your proximity to Rutland and Killington, Pico, the outdoor assets that you have, and the sort of the vibrancy of the people who live there, who've chosen to be in this place. What I saw when I looked at the statistics and the materials that the council put together for this, though, is a really small, young family population. And what I heard from you all tonight is the desire.
Oh, we lost him. We lost him completely. And I bet, Trey, I don't know if you can hear us. Seemed like he was going to say, you need affordable housing, but I don't know. Trey.
Boy, yeah, I was, gosh, how frustrating. But it's, yes, I was curious about this housing statistic in the report because it looked like there was 40% of the units were vacant, but they're obviously not the housing that young families are looking for. I also am really curious about what you're going to do to stop people who are coming through. How can you make yourself the attractive place that people traveling towards Rutland stop before they get to Rutland? How are you going to be the place that people leave out of Rutland and stop before they get to Killington and Pico? And as you all know, things that you get families to stop and do, they spend more money, they spend more time, they contribute to the sort of the energy and vitality of your community when you get them to stop in. Do you want to have more childcare resources that people traveling through would use on their way to and from Rutland and Killington? Do you want to have more gateways to the natural environment, especially family-friendly ones? And do you want to have other kinds of family-based destinations, whether it's a couple of events per quarter or things that draw a huge crowd? Anyways, it's also amazed me when I was looking at the map. I kept going back to look at that, how little of Mendon is developed or developable. It's really gathered around the 4 corridor, and then there's a few arteries that go around, but you're not gonna, doesn't strike me, build a huge new town center. You might make some of those assets nicer, and you might make some of those assets more inviting to folks who are coming through. But working with the existing housing, working with the existing buildings that you have, there's probably plenty of built environment already to connect those people who are coming through. Anyway, I got a little disjointed in my head there with the interruptions, but let me hand it over, Paul, to the next visiting team member.
We caught a great deal, Trey, so thank you so much. Ed Bove, Regional Planning Director for Rutland County.
Always hard to follow Trey, so but I'll give it a shot. I don't have too much new to add. I just want to highlight a couple of things I noticed. We were talking about some of the housing theme and some of the redevelopment possibilities. And the one thing, it was only mentioned once, was the Alpine pipeline that comes down from Killington Pikel. You have like a sewer line that runs right down Route 4, which could unlock a lot of potential. So that's kind of an asset that definitely has capacity and could be utilized more. The fresh air, the clean water, that's huge. Paul, you mentioned, you know, is that where the hiking trails are, or is this where the hiking trails are? Mendon's the kind of place where you don't go to the hiking trails. You're kind of just on the hiking trails. There are some great spots like going up the back of Pico and Killington, but walking down the road or going through the woods, you're already there. So it's one of those types of places. And just one last thing I want to share is an annual thing me and my kids do, which is we just go in the springtime and we get some wine glasses and we drive up Wheelerville Road, right up to Notro, Wheelerville, and we just get some of the water that's coming out of the side of the mountain and drink it, because it's like the freshest, most purest thing you could ever do. And the kids love it. So that, like, to me, just is an example of what Mendon is and has to offer for families. So
That's a beautiful story, Ed. I thought you were going to say, and then we take out our shotguns and we blow up the glass. Sorry, but that's a very sweet story. Let's go to Kevin Weiberg from the Vermont Community Foundation. What have you heard as key themes and directions?
Yeah, I wondered where you were going with the wine glasses and the kids, Ed, but you pulled it out just the right time. I just want to note a couple things. One is you're a very small community, and I know they've shared a lot of statistics with you, but statistics for small communities like Mendon are just not terribly reliable. I'm looking at this going, okay, so there's 55 people in Mendon living in poverty, but there's only 3 families living in poverty. So that just raises a question for me. So dig into that when you get a chance.
And just to add quick, we don't usually discuss this for folks because we don't send that visiting profile to everyone, but I'm the person who wrote it, and a lot of the data is from 2008. So just, we try to put as many disclosures in it as we can, but just to highlight that, don't take any of the data notes too seriously, because a lot of it likely could have changed or is just off. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think the things that have really stuck out to me is, you know, your connection to a wonderful, beautiful part of Vermont and all the recreational amenities to it. And then I'm just focused on Route 4 at the moment. You know, there's infrastructure there. I don't know the shape of it, but you know, and I know I'm just going to break the rule. I don't always do it, but I think doing an inventory of what's there is going to be really critical. You know, who owns it? What's the tax lien issue, or you know, what is that? Motels seem kind of real suited for rehab. You know, if you think about these little rooms, you know, one could be a business incubator, one could be a small library, one could be a coffee shop, coffee house. Maybe a larger room could be a community center, you know, a temporary holiday store for crafters, maybe even a small childcare could go into something like that. And then the same with the restaurants, you know, there's such a lack of meeting space, as you guys know, but that's throughout the state of Vermont. You know, if you had something like a restaurant that you could invest in, you could use it for things like small processing of local foods, a community gathering space that allows you to celebrate with food together. And also it becomes maybe something that could be a potential income generator for the community if you chose to rent it out to others. So I'm just going to leave that there.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Tyler Richardson from the Regional Development Corporation. Tyler.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting me listen in tonight. It's been great hearing your feedback and appreciate your efforts this evening. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I heard a couple of different themes from both of these sessions that I've been in this evening, and one has been about events. How do we bring more people together? It sounds like there's a real desire among the community members to meet more often, and you feel like there's just not either a place to do that or a reason to do that, but the desire is there, and that's huge. And that's something to feed off of. And then the other theme is you know, I'll echo Kevin, is Route 4 is coming up over and over and over again. And it sounds like, you know, you're having a conversation where you want a community center, you want affordable housing, and then you have these properties to redevelop. Exactly what Kevin just said. There seems to be an opportunity there. And I want to touch on something Paul mentioned, which which was a bouncing off of a comment from Danielle, which is, it sounds like there's a lot of opportunities for leadership in this community, where if there were events or if there were things to organize, people will show up and do it. That's huge. And when you're talking about something like repurposing vacant buildings on Route 4, that's a heavy lift, and that's going to require a lot of folks coming together and doing a lot of planning over a long period of time. So that leadership's going to need to be sustained, but it sounds like you have the bones and the makings to do just that. And again, something Paul said: resources follow the coordinated work. So you put in that work, and you'll see the fruit.
Thank you so much, Tyler. I'm going to go next, and then we'll give Alyssa a chance to share any last reflections. Kevin, you know, you're not supposed to get too far ahead of stuff, but I think that it's kind of, everyone sort of brought it up, and it's been part of the conversation we've been having with the town for a couple of years. Who owns the properties on Route 4, one after another? Who owns them? What shape are they in? Are they derelicts? Are they paying their taxes? What's the power of the municipality over derelict buildings in town? Are there some of those buildings that could be repossessed or should be tax sales? One way or another, you have a set of underused or mismanaged community or, you know, town assets, not owned by the town. But the question is, you know, what do you do as a set of strategies around those properties? And you think about the opportunities to have a store, a ski shop, affordable housing for people who work on the mountain, a community center. The other ideas that hit the table here, the different functionalities in those things. People in the old days built our communities, and people today can rebuild them. People have the power, when they line up together, to redo Route 4. People have the power to build community centers. And when they determine to do so and they line up as a community, they become a spear point of activity that builds momentum and energy and gets noticed, and other people want to be part of it. And federal agencies and state agencies and nonprofits and regional planning commissions and regional development corporations, they want to be part of it. They want to help the town be successful. But when there isn't local initiative and there's not organized direction, there's nowhere for the regional development corporation to really intersect with how they can help. And we see towns like Swanton, which organized a significant economic development effort that they hadn't had in 20 years, become transformed and get on the list of projects for the next infusion of technical assistance and dollars. I'm going to turn it to Alyssa with that and just encourage you all. Alyssa, sorry, you've only got 40 seconds.
No, I'll encourage as well. I mean, in my job, I get to work with communities after this process. And the thing that helps folks move forward is when they're excited and coordinated about one idea and want to figure out ways to make it happen. So I look forward to hearing from you all in the next meeting and thinking about next steps, and hopefully working with some of you beyond that to help support some of these projects actually coming to life. So thanks for being here and sharing tonight.
Thank you, Alyssa. And thank you all for being part of the conversation. You know, you wouldn't be on if you weren't dedicated to the future of Mendon. And we have a lot of confidence that great things are going to come from this process. So we're all going to be drawn back into the larger group conversation. Just to close, see you in 10 seconds.
Great in your town. I think it'd be an easy or a wonderful win.
Okay.
Welcome, maybe welcome.
Okay.
Maybe welcome to Mendon.
Boy, don't we love it here in Mendon. We would love to be in person with you all and have these conversations face to face in the same room and everything, but boy, what a great conversation. Jenna, do you want to do a quick review of what's coming next for Mendon?
I'd love to. Yeah, so thank you for sharing all of your ideas tonight. So we're going to take all of the input from tonight. We're also going to couple it with the input on the survey that has gone out. So I don't know, Nick or Alyssa, I don't know which one. If you could share a link to the website on the Mendon Mendon on the Move website, there's a link to a survey that's gone around and folks have provided input that way. There's also for the next week going to be surveys available at DePello's Coffee and at the town office. If you have written input to share, or if you know of others in town that weren't able to participate tonight but may have ideas to share, please encourage them. And so after next week, we'll collect all of that and we'll bring it back to you next month. So mark your calendars for April 21st. We'll also plug into the chat a link to register for that next meeting. And in that meeting, we'll have a lot to accomplish. We're going to review those vision points that we talked about tonight and make some decisions. We're going to review potential ideas for action and set priorities. And then we're going to actually break out into task force groups and dig into some action planning to say, if we want to make these things happen, what are the first steps that we'll take? And also, what are the resources out there to get those things done? And we'll bring next time a resource team back with us that can sit with those groups and really get into that nitty gritty of the resources that are out there and the things that maybe they could even do to support the work. So looking forward to hopefully seeing you all on April 21st. Bring a neighbor, bring a friend, and we'll see you then.
Great, thanks so much, Jenna. I want to thank Ed Bove, Brockton Corbett, Ben Doyle, Lyle Jepson, Trey Martin, John Michael Muse, John Sinclair, Tyler Richardson, Kevin Weiberg, Margaret, Alyssa, Jenna, and Nick from VCRD. Select board. This process is a neutral process. We don't, again, come in with an agenda, but there's a fascinating agenda on the table in Mendon, and we appreciate the leadership of the select board that invited the process, the planning commission, and the economic development group that's been in town wrestling with some of these issues long term. The energy in the Mendon community to drive on some of these issues is really impressive. We're seeing some things that came back over and over and over in the 2.5 hours that we were part of on our side, and I'm sure the other side was similar. There's core themes and big ideas on the table that are within the power of people when they pull together in collective action. We're connecting you this week with a group of 10 people with connections to resources. Next month, we'll bring back another group. We're very excited to work with you. When you have direction and you have community willpower, you have the power to get things done. And there's the opportunity to make history. And today is a day when we're coming from the COVID challenge and from some of the national issues we've had in disunity to think about how we make democracy real, make it strong, make it effective right here in our communities. So thank you for being on the line, for being dedicated to your place. It's a great honor to be part of this conversation with you, and we hope to see you all on April 21st. So we'll be in touch. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Bye-bye.